Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. Prologue, Pike 2089. Jaime stood in his tent and began to remove his armor. The fighting was done. The rebellion quashed. Although why the Ironborn thought they could match the combined forces of most of the Seven Kingdoms was a mystery to him. Did they really think that Robert's rule was that fragile? Did they not understand that with Stark and Aaron, Robert controlled 3 kingdoms, and with Cersei as his wife, that gave him a 4th? Even if they didn't join in, that was surely too many for a pile of rocks to handle. Father may have held back during Robert's rebellion, but he'd never hold back with his blood on the throne. But just to poke the lion even more, they decide it's a good idea to attack Lannisport. Were they really that dumb? Evidently so. So now Balon sits on a broken throne. 2 sons dead, and the other to be a hostage, no doubt. Robert would give that dubious honor to Stark. Jack Simon felt alive in the carnage of the fighting. It was the only thing that actually did make him feel anything. Since that day in the Red Keep, he had failed, and no matter what he did, that failure always kept coming back to him. Look after my family, Sarah, Jaime. Things will change when I return. But Rhaegar hadn't returned, and Jaime could never have imagined his father would sink so low. Before his thoughts could get the better of him once again, he was interrupted by a boy at his tent. "Sir Jaime, the king wishes to speak to you." The boy nervously said, "Very well, I'll be there presently." As he entered the king's tent, he could tell this was no ordinary meeting. Stark sat there, his serious expression showing. Wait, what was that look? Was that pity? Who the hell does he think he is to pity me? The anger threatened to rise. But before he could say anything, the king spoke very quietly and low, and very unlike the jovial or angry Robert that he was used to. "There have been bad tidings from Harlaw. I know no other way to say this other than to say it. Your father, he fell. Jaime, he's gone." The rest of the conversation had been a blur. Still now, he wasn't sure if he heard anything after the news about his father. Tywin Lannister, the Lord of Casterly Rock, the Lion of Lannisport, fall into a damn Ironborn Reaver. Surely this was wrong. Surely the messenger had been mistaken. Raimi clutched his chest, his breathing erratic. He fell down on the ground and looked up to see Ned Stark offering him a hand. He brushed it away and forced himself to his feet as he turned to leave the tent. The king began to speak. "We need to—" "Not now, your grace," Stark angrily said, and for the first time, Jaime actually felt something other than contempt for the man. Later, as he sat in his tent, he felt more composed. He drank so many cups of water that he could feel the result pushing against his bladder. So he walked outside to the nearest empty space and relieved the pressure, each drop making him more relaxed. He laughed at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, pissing in the wind while his father lay dead miles away. What a waste. Heading back to his tent, realization began to dawn on him. His father was gone, and yet, where there should be sadness, he felt only relief. Oh, sure, there was pain mixed in there, but surprisingly, the overriding emotion wasn't what it should have been. His father had been a monster. The events of the rebellion proved that. The body was covered in blood. The red Lannister banner covering it couldn't hide it. But it was the 2 others that his eyes focused on. Smaller yet equally blood-spattered. Children, they were only children. Jaime stopped and the entire contents of his stomach emptied against the ground. Luckily, he hadn't really eaten since he heard the news. As he reached his tent, the same small boy was standing there. "Great, another message from the king, just what I need, Sir Jaime," the boy began nervously. "Let me guess the king wishes my presence once again." "Very well, lead the way, young man." He smiled at the boy as they began to walk towards the king's tent. As before, Ned Stark was sitting to the right of the king, but the look in his eyes was different. What was it? Hope? No, it wasn't hope. Relief, was it? Relief? No, not that either. Whatever it was, Jaime didn't get to make the connection as once again the king spoke. "Oh, Sir Jaime, good to see you're feeling better." Feeling better? Was he a moron? Did he think he was sick? His father died, and this was the best this idiot could come up with as a greeting. Jaime noticed, even Stark looking at him incredulously. "We have much to discuss. Casterly Rock for one, and we need a new Warden of the West. It seems your time in my King's Guard is at an end." "Sir Jaime." The road to Winterfell was rough, and the terrain dreary, but Jaime didn't mind. He actually quite liked the peacefulness of the empty spaces of the north. Besides, compared to the gray waste that was the Iron Islands, anything was an improvement. It had been less than 2 moons since his life had changed. He probably should have headed home with the rest of the Westerlands forces, considering he was their new warden. But the thoughts of having to see his father's body and the inevitable looks he'd have faced from the Lords of the West was something he wasn't ready for just yet. So to Winterfell it was. He'd been surprised when Stark had asked if he wished to accompany the king. Surprised even more when for some reason he agreed. "Thank you, Lord Stark. I think I will." He enjoyed the stunned expression on the wolf's face. They were to stay for only a short time. A boon to Stark, no doubt, having the king in his keep, from there on to White Harbor, and home, his father's body to be laid to rest in the Hall of Heroes besides his forefathers. He had written to Tyrion to explain what had happened, telling him that he would return soon, and was sorry that he couldn't come quicker. He could have, of course, but for some reason he wished to go to Winterfell. "What a strange world we live in," he said aloud to the bemusement of the two guards nearest him. As they crested a hill, the castle came into view, large and gray but very impressive. The walls and towers looked ancient but sturdy. He looked to the front of the procession to see Stark and the king laughing and joking with one another. Just kiss already, he thought, as a smile appeared on his face. When they entered the castle, he saw what must have been every single resident awaiting their liege lord and king. Almost as one, they dropped to their knees. "Winterfell is yours, my lord, and yours, your grace." Stumbling over his words, the man looked as uncomfortable as could be. The long, serious face of the Starks evident. "Don't these people ever smile?" he thought. Before the man showed he could bingeon, "It's good to see you, brother." He watched as the Starks embraced. His thoughts going out to his little brother alone in Casterly Rock. Soon Tyrion, soon. "Rise all of you and welcome your lord home. We dealt the squids a mighty defeat, and your lord was at the very heart of it." The king boomed across the courtyard. "Can't you look as beautiful as ever?" A tall, auburn-headed woman blushed as the king kissed her hand. "And this must be your boy, a fine warden of the north. He'll make one day, won't ya, lad?" The king brushed his hand on the shoulder of a young auburn-headed boy as his mother looked on proudly. "Your grace, my lord, perhaps we should take this inside. The weather seems about to turn." Catelyn turned to the small little girl beside her, she too auburn-headed like her mother. "Sansa, won't you say hello to your father?" The girl shyly looked up before yelping in joy as Ned pulled her up and swung her around. A little girl's laughter filled the courtyard, and once again I was in place I wished not to be. "Where's Balerion, princess?" "He's hiding, father." "Oh, shall we find him then?" "No, father. No tickles." I felt the tears welling in my eyes, so quickly turned around and walked to my horse. As Jaime was escorted to his room, he noticed a small dark-haired boy swinging a sword at a straw dummy. His form was terrible, but the strength he was showing was surprising before he realized the boy was angry and taking it out on the nearest available object. "Keep your chin up, boy." The boy looked at him, and for a second he thought he saw purple in his eyes, but he realized he was mistaken. As the gray-eyed boy looked at him, "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean any offense." He dropped the wooden sword and sloped off towards the stables. "Don't worry, lad, none given," but he was already out of sight. The feast that night was a dull affair. Sure, the Northerners had a different way of feasting than those in the South, and the king was in his usual boisterous mood. Manhandling, serving girls, and getting drunker by the second, the only satisfaction Jaime got was seeing Stark's disapproval aimed at someone other than him. His wife was sitting beside him with a thunderous look on her face. Surprisingly, though, it didn't seem to be the king's behavior causing that look. Instead, it was focused on something at the back of the hall, or more precisely, someone. The boy from earlier sat there among what appeared to be servants and guards. He was laughing at something one of them was saying when he looked to the high table. As soon as he did, the smile stopped and a look of seriousness that stirred something deep inside of Yachtme took over. Instead, where have I seen that look? Who is this boy? Jaime, though, as he decided to look more closely, but before he could, a loud bang at the front of the hall grabbed his and everyone's attention. "Well, help me, damn you!" Trant and Blount moving quickly to pick the drunken king up, his former sworn brothers. This is what the Kingsguard has become, arsewipers to a drunk king. He turned from the looking at the fat oaf to search for the boy once again, only to find his seat empty. Where had he gone? He got up from his seat and left in search of him. His curiosity getting the better of him. It didn't take too long to find him. There he was, once again, sword in hand, beating the hell out of a new straw dummy. "Your form is terrible," he turned to me. "Sir," I smiled, trying to put the boy at ease. "Lord Jaime Lannister," the boy frowned as he heard his name. "Damn it, would you like some pointers?" Finally a smile. "Yes, sir, I mean my lord." For the next couple of hours, Jaime went through stances, footwork, and forms, and the boy proved to be a quick study, quicker than most boys at an age much older than he was. "What's your name, lad?" His face suddenly darkened. Jon Snow, my lord." Bastard. So this was the boy that stained the honorable cloak of Ned Stark. "Well, you've got talent, young man. If you keep it up, you'll be an excellent swordsman one day." The smile he gave him was blinding and familiar. No, it couldn't be. The dreams came to him again that night, the bodies placed before the throne. Children. I see no children. I see only dragon spawn. "Sir Jaime, have you seen Billion?" a little girl asked. Mother said, "I'm not to let Billion near Egg, but Egg wants to meet her." "Look after my children, Sir Jaime. Things will change when I return. Please, Sir Jaime, you have to help us away from here. My children. And I aren't safe with a usse. Now, Egg, Mother says you're not allowed to play with Billion, Sir Jaime." "Sir Jaime, I found her. She was hiding all the time." The smile on the little girl's face was blinding as she showed Jaime her cat. He woke up in a cold sweat. It was the same smile. It was Rhaenys's smile. Jaime got out of bed and threw some water on his face. The coldness a welcome respite from the thoughts in his head. It had to be, but how? He began to play the events of the rebellion back in his head. Stark had left after arguing with the king. He had stood up for Elia and her children and called it out for what it was. Murder. Then he left to lift the siege at Storm's End. Then what? Damn, why couldn't he remember? He quickly got dressed. It was early, but perhaps breaking his fast would clear the fuzz from his head. He sat down to eat the honey-covered porridge, savage as the northerners may be. But this is certainly the only dignified way to start the day in this cold land, each bite making him feel better. He finished up and went outside to the training area. A part of him hoping to see the boy again, but it was too early and he was alone, so he picked up a sword and began going through the motions, feeling the calmness he always did when he did this. After a few minutes, Jaime turned to put the sword back down when he noticed him. He'd been watching and was mimicking his movements as best he could. It made him smile to see how close he came to copying them. "What brings you out so early, young man?" He shot him a surprised look at the sound of his voice. Nothing, my lord. I was just watching." "You were doing more than watching. You were copying and doing a damn good job of it." A guilty look quickly became something different. Was that pride? It was. Good, he was right to feel pride. 6 name days old, and he was already showing more promise than boys. Twice his age. "My lord, those moves, why do you do them?" The question caught Jaime off guard for a moment. "Why do you think?" He watched as the boy pondered the question before answering. "Because the more you do them, the easier they are. Then doing them feels easy and calms you down," the boy surprisingly said. He looked at the lad, closer than he had before. He could see it clearly then, the shape of the nose, the cheekbones, the purple in the eyes when the light hit them a certain way. It all became clear. He was Rhaegar's son, and that could only mean that Lyanna Stark was his mother. "Yes, lad, well done. That's exactly why. Would you like to practice some more with me?" And there it was, that blinding smile once again. They practiced for a couple of hours. At some point, the auburn-headed boy, Stark's heir, Robb, turned up. "What are you doing, Snow? That's the Kingslayer." Jaime grimaced. "Lord Jaime was teaching me swords. He's really good," and he couldn't help but smile. "Whatever." Robb turned around and headed back towards the hall. "Don't mind him. He's not a morning person." Jon turned towards him smiling as they continued and began a mock spar. Later on, after the two had parted, Jaime went back and sat in his room. Stark had broken the siege at Storm's End and went to Dorne. Then he returned with his sister's body and a bastard. No one questioned it, because if the great honorable Ned Stark was claiming a stain on his damnable honor, then it must be true. But what happened? Was the boy even a bastard? Jaime needed to know. He needed to speak with Stark. Jaime left his room and headed towards the great hall. On the way he heard a raised voice, so stopped to listen. "Boy, what were you doing with Lord Jaime? A bastard like you shouldn't be near their betters. I'll not have shame brought upon my family by the likes of you." He could hear the sniffles as if he was standing beside the boy. "From now on, I don't want to see you anywhere near any of the noble lords. It's enough I have to tolerate your presence. I won't inflict it upon those better than you. By the 7. What would they think of us?" She turned to walk away before Jaime managed to round the corner. Jon sat there on the ground, tears rolling down his face. And as much as he wanted to go to him, he knew that he'd be embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I won't do it again." I turned away angrily to look for Stark. It took him almost the rest of the day to get a moment to talk to Stark. He and the king were joined at the hip. Jaime had always heard that Lyanna was the great love of the king's life, but the more he saw of him and Stark together, the more he thought that perhaps Ned was the Stark he loved. "Lord Stark, may I have a moment of your time when you're ready?" Stark looked at him with annoyance clear in his face. "I'm very busy, Lord Jaime." "Yeah, kissing the king's arse, you damn toady. I wish to speak with you about your son." His annoyance turned to confusion now. "Robb? Why would you want to speak about Robb?" Jaime almost laughed. Of course, he'd think it was the heir, especially considering he was his only son. "No, not Robb. I wish to speak about Jon." Jaime watched as the color drained from his face. "Certainly, how about we meet in my solar in an hour?" Jaime agreed before walling away. As he headed to the solar to meet with Stark, Jaime grew more determined in his course of action. Rhaegar's son didn't belong here, bastard or not. He deserved better than to be belittled by a stepmother that hated his existence, deserved better than to grow up meek and mild. The boy had talent, but he'd never be allowed to hone it here. He'd never be allowed to be anything other than a bastard. "I failed Rhaegar once, not again," Jaime thought. As he reached the solar, he noticed the guards outside. Was Stark worried about something? Was he afraid he'd out his secret? Good, let him be afraid. That'd make what needs to be done easier. "Lord Stark, Lord Jaime is here to see you." A guard opened the door before he heard Stark invite him in. He motioned to the seat and offered a glass of wine. A part of Jaime worried he'd poison him if he knew that Jaime knew. But he figured that guest rights were way too important to his honor for even that, so he accepted the wine and sat down. "My wife has told me Jon has been hanging around you, Lord Jaime. I'll see to it that he doesn't bother you again. I've already spoken to—" Jaime quickly put his glass down. "Gods, were these people really that dumb?" "You misunderstand me, Lord Stark. I'm not here because the boy was bothering me. Quite the opposite, in fact. I'm here because I want the boy to be my page and then squire. I want the boy to earn a knighthood." Stark looked at him with a mixture of shock and horror. He reached down and picked his glass of wine up, emptying it in one swallow. "Excuse me, but what?" Jaime looked at him to see curiosity in his eyes. He was trying to read him. "I said I want the boy to earn a knighthood. He's very talented. Under the right tutelage, he could be incredible. I want to train him." Stark looked dumbfounded and then angry. "No. Why not? He's of the North. We don't care for knighthoods here." "Really, isn't your master of arms a knight? Didn't Jorah Mormont get knighted by the king? Don't the Manderleys have knights in their family, or are they not Northmen?" "That's different. They're not Starks. Neither is Jon. How dare you? He may be a bastard, but he is my son." "Is he—" Stark looked at him as if he wanted to kill him. His face was red with rage. He stood up and gripped the table, looking him directly in his eyes. "He is my blood." "Yes, but not your son. Get out." The two guards rushed in, hearing their lord's raised voice. Hands on their swords, they looked at Jaime as he sat there, both of them just waiting for the word from their liege to strike him down. Not that they would have been able to, but ready to try all the same. "Lord Stark, we should finish this conversation in private, rather than have others know of what we speak." Stark looked at him, then at the guards, before looking at him again. "That'll be all, lads. Move to the end of the corridor and make sure we're not disturbed." "Are you sure, my lord?" Stark nodded at the smaller one before they both took their leave. "What do you know?" "I know that Jon is Rhaegar's bastard with Lyanna. He's trueborn." "What?" "They were married in front of Lyanna's gods on the Isle of Faces and in the light of the Seven at a small sept near Harrenhal." "Jon is trueborn?" "Yes. You raised the rightful heir to the throne as a bastard. Robert is king. Jon is king, and you raised him as a bastard so your fat friend could sit on his throne. I protected him, as was my sister's wish. You protected your friend and let your nephew suffer because of it." Stark looked at him with guilt in his eyes, and Jaime felt his anger seep out. Rhaegar's son, his true-born son, raised as a bastard, but alive. In this way, Stark had done something he could not. He'd saved Rhaegar's child, and for that he was grateful. "What are your plans for Jon, Lord Stark?" You have none. You won't legitimize him or give him his own keep. So what? Have him be a guard, a master, or arms, or will you ship him off to the Night's Watch? The Night's Watch is an honorable calling for a bastard. But Jon is not a bastard, is he? He's trueborn. He was born a king, and you'd send him to a damn penal colony. Why? He'd be protected there. He'd be no threat to Robert if he took his vows. You damn you nephew to protect that fat fool. You'd let Rhaegar's line die with him. That's how you repay your promise to sister. Let the boy come with me. I'll train him, knight him when he's ready. And why would you do this? I made a promise too, Lord Stark. A promise which I failed to keep. But now I have the chance to. Let the boy come with me. Let me give him the future you could not. Stark looked drained. He filled his glass once more and swallowed it again in one swoop. Finally, he looked up at me, resignation, and was that a spot of gratitude in his face? Okay. Jaime stood up and left the solar, feeling lighter than he had in years. He'd been given a second chance, a chance to right the wrongs his father did. To right the wrongs he did, he'd train Jon, help him how he could, and when the time is right, he'd put him where he belonged, on the throne that was rightfully his. Ned tossed and turned for most of the night. Sleep hard to find, he eventually gave up and got out of bed quietly so as not to wake Cat. He dressed and went to the one place where he always found peace, the Godswood. As he knelt before the weirwood tree, he thought over what had happened, what he had agreed to. Was he breaking his promise, or, as Jaime Lannister had accused him, had he already done so? How would his sister see it? Lazier, have I failed your boy? His voice softly carried in the night. He sat there for hours, the cold not bothering him, so lost was he in his thoughts. Jaime offered Jon something he couldn't, or was that wouldn't. The feeling of shame at some of what he'd been accused of, too hard to shake off. Had he protected Robert more than he had Jon? He knew Cat had never accepted the boy, and while she had never been physically abusive, she had made it clear what he was, and that he was not the same as her children. My children, have I done the same? Have I treated him as my son? The simple answer was he hadn't. And the thought of it broke his heart. Ned resolved to do better. Jon would have a better life with Jaime away from Caxistain and from being reminded constantly that he was a bastard. He'd have a chance at a future, and if come the day the truth outed, then Ned would be there for him. He left the Godswood and went to the only other place he felt peace, the crypts, walking past the statues until he found Ayres, the fierce little sister he loved so much. He looked up at the likeness. The sculptor had tried his best, but no statue could ever capture the light that shone in Lyanna. No sculptor was talented enough to capture the love of life she exhibited. He looked up at her face, the face that haunted him most nights, and he smiled. You'd be so proud of him, yeah. Kneeling down, he began to dig at the base of the statue, moving the dirt aside until he found what he was looking for. The box looked exactly as it had when he found it in the tower, so many years earlier. The three-headed dragon entwined, holding a blue rose in its talons. Wiping the dust from the wood made the image come to life as if it had just been painted yesterday. He opened the box and checked its contents. Once he was sure they were all there, he moved behind the statue and opened the base to find the other object. Long and slim and wrapped in a sheet. He took it and the box and headed back inside. Jon woke up earlier than usual. He quickly dressed and left the room, figuring he'd have a little time to train before breaking his fast. As he walked towards the training area, he saw a figure enter through the opposite door. Moving closer, he saw it was his father carrying something in his hands. He almost shouted out a hello, until he saw his father's face, which made him reconsider. His father looked as if the last thing he wanted was to be spoken to, so Jon left him be and continued on his way. Jaime could get addicted to porridge and honey. What had started firstly as a warm meal to break his fast on these cold northern mornings had quickly become something he would make sure would be served in Casterly Rock from now on. He decided to have a second bowl, and as he motioned to the serving girl to bring it in, he saw Jon enter the room. Sweat running down his brow, he looked as if he'd been training yet again. Jaime admired his dedication. Not every young lad would put in a training session before breaking their fast. He motioned the young lad over, deciding he'd like some company, while eating the second bowl of porridge, and besides, the boy would no doubt eat on his own. Otherwise, Lord Jaime, sit down, lad. Break your fast with me. Jon looked pensively at him before looking around the room. After a moment, and obviously finding whatever it was he wanted to find, he sat down. Were you out training again, lad? Oh, Lord Jaime. I was. Good lad. The more you apply yourself, the better you'll become. In no time at all, you'll be taking victories of even me. Jon smiled a full smile at him before shaking his head. I doubt that, my lord. Everyone knows you're the best swordsman in Westeros. Not even Sarberistan the Bold can beat you. I've no chance. True, lad, right now you've no chance. But mark my words, one day you'll be taking victories from me and everyone else. Then you'll be the best swordsman in Westeros. Jon looked at him with awe. the smile on his face even bigger than before. Jaime nudged him on the shoulder, making him laugh out loud, as the serving girl brought the porridge and Jon's plate filled with sausages and bacon. The two of them tucked in, talking and laughing with each other as they ate. And then Jon came in, his breeches around his legs, shouting, "Where is the little sod?" Jon was curled over, tears falling from his face, as Jaime shared stories of the adventure he and Tyrion got up in the rock. Jaime, too, couldn't stop himself from laughing as he looked at the boy. He turned to drink some of the warm milk he washed his porridge down with, and when he turned back to Jon, he saw the laughter had stopped. The smile had disappeared, and instead, Jon was looking down at his empty plate, a look of worry on his face. Jaime wondered what had happened to change the mood so quickly. Looking around, he saw Ned and Cat enter the hall, the scowl on the Trout's face quickly explaining Jon's sudden mood change. "Don't worry, lad. Soon you won't have to deal with her pettiness anymore." Later that day, Jaime headed to Ned's solar. Stark wanted to see him before they told Jon about Jaime's offer. He walked past the guard who opened the door as he got there. Clearly, he was expected. "Sit down, Lord Yaxley. There are things we need to discuss." Yaxley took the offered seat. Worried that perhaps Stark was going to backtrack, perhaps he was going to call his bluff, Jaime had admitted he cared for Jon's welfare. Had he said too much? Was Stark now sure he'd never reveal the secret and was going to refuse to allow Jon to leave? "Before I speak to Jon, there are some things we should clear up." "Very well, Lord Stark." "Call me Ned. This lord nonsense gets tiring when it's only the two of us speaking." "First name status. Aren't I special?" Jaime quipped. "Damn it, Lannister. I'm trying to be civil." "Very well then, Ned," the smirk still on his face, clearly annoying Stark. "There are things that belong to Jon, things his mother kept for him, things I may not have ever given him if we hadn't spoken." "What things?" "I never meant for Jon to be treated differently. It was never meant to be like this." Confession time. "Is it, Lord Stark?" "Very well, confess away. I'll listen if I must. Just as long as this leads to me leaving with Rhaegar's son, I'll put up with your inane drivel if that's the price." At first it helped the story. What woman would love her husband's bastard? It was to be expected that she'd be distant, even that she may be mean to the lad. Oh, she'd never touch a hair on his head, but I let it go on because it kept him safe. James Ye sighed. "But I suppose I never thought how badly it'd affect Jon." "Of course you didn't. What she said you were right. I put Robert's reign over my nephew. I did it to protect Jon, but you're right, I did it for Robert as well. I still think it's too dangerous for Jon to make a claim, but it should never have been my decision to make once I decided not to claim for him." Ned stood from the table and walked to the back of the room. He returned carrying a box and something wrapped in a sheet. Laying them out on the table, he looked at Jaime and pointed towards them. "Jon's birthright." Jaime looked from the table to Ned. After receiving a nod, he reached over and opened the box. Inside he found some papers, a piece of material wrapped around a round object, and a golden harp. "Is this—" "It is. This is Rhaegar's harp." "Aye, it is." Jaime looked at the harp with reverence on his face. No one who knew Rhaegar could forget the times he played that harp. The sound he was able to get from it were otherworldly. His hands shaking, he lifted it up. The strings still as tight as they ever were. He carefully put it back down and picked up the papers. A marriage certificate between Rhaegar and Lyanna, signed by the Septon and witnessed by Ser Arthur and Ser Oswell, as well as a notice of annulment between Rhaegar and Elia, signed by them both. There's also a letter from Elia to her brothers explaining her choice. Jaime was stunned. Stark had all the evidence which proved that the rebellion was built on a lie. If Robert ever found out he'd lose his head, then Stark would lose his. The other two are Jon's birth announcements, one for a girl and one for a boy. They hadn't been sure, so they went with both. Yaxley looked at the documents. "We hereby announce the birth of our son. Yaxley is Targaryen, second in line to the throne after his brother Aegon, signed by his parents Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Targaryen, and witnessed by Sir Gerald Hightower, Sir Oswell, and Sir Arthur Dane." The other document was pretty much the same, except for being for Visenya, in case the babe was a girl. Josian placed the documents back in the box and took the material wrapped object in his hand. The heaviness of it surprised him, and he looked up to see Stark wipe a tear from his eye. "Was your maiden cloak?" Jaxley Sewer nodded, understanding how difficult it must be for Ned to look at the cloak given what happened. He unwrapped it and almost dropped what it was covering. He had never seen one before, never even knew anyone who had. But it was clear as day he was holding a dragon egg. The white swirls with flecks of blue shone in the small solar, and Jaxley turned it over and over, looking at it in amazement. As he did, he noticed a small letter fall from the beneath where the cloak had covered the egg. He looked at it and at Stark. "What's this?" "I don't know, I've never seen it before." He picked up the letter and saw one word written on it. Jaxley, he handed it to Ned, who looked at it before smiling. Lozier's handwriting. They looked at each other, coming to a silent conclusion. This was not for them. It was Jon's. Between him and his mother, and they would leave it to him to open it eventually. Jaime wrapped the egg back in the cloak, placing both things back into the box. He made sure he got everything inside before closing the lid. Then he looked at Ned, who was handing him the final object, something long and skinny and wrapped in a sheet. Wait, no, that wasn't a sheet, that was a banner. A specific banner. That was Rhaegar's personal banner. The three-headed dragon, holding a sword in one talon and a harp in the other. Taking the object from Ned, he unwrapped it quickly. Excitement building in his cheek based on what he'd found so far. He almost dropped it when he uncovered it. This can't be. It is, though, isn't it? Aye, that's Dark Sister, all right. How? Where? How? I don't know. All I know is that it was left in the tower with the box. Jaime couldn't believe it. The sword was the stuff of legend, wielded by the Xenia Daemon, the rogue prince, by Brynden River's Bloodraven, and by Aemon the Dragon Knight. The very epitome of what a king's guard was supposed to be. The papers proved Jon's legitimacy. The dragon egg was incredibly valuable. The harp, letter, and cloak and banner were ties to Jon's parent. But Jaime was, and always will be, a swordsman first and foremost. And Dark Sister was to him something tangible, something real, something he would have wanted if he was Jon, and now it would be Jon's. Jaime couldn't keep the grin from his face. He turned Jon into the best damn swordsman ever, a man worthy of the blade he'd carry. Jon was worried. He'd been caught again. The first time Lady Catelyn had made it clear he was to keep away from nobles like Lord Jaime. But the thing was, Jaime wasn't like other noble lords. He was different. He didn't look down on Jon like they did. He talked to him, listened to him. He even sparred and trained with him. When Jon was with Jaime, he didn't feel like a bastard. He felt like a true-born son. He felt the way he thought Robb must feel when lords speak to him, when they compliment him. No one ever bothered to make Jon feel like that, but now he ruined it. He'd been warned and got caught, and now his father wanted to see him. Jon hated disappointing his father more than anything in the world, and now he'd done it twice in 2 days. "Here you go, lad. Your father's waiting for you, inside," Sir Luderick said as he motioned for him to enter the solar. Jon, good, take a seat, lad." Jon looked around the solar nervously. Lady Catelyn sat beside his father, her face in what Jon thought was a permanent scowl. Or no, that's not true. She smiles sometimes. Just never at me. Jon fidgeted in his seat, the worry starting to rush over him. If Lady Catelyn was here, then it was serious. Whatever excuse Jon gave, she was sure to ignore or shout down. Jon was in trouble, and he knew it. "Was sorry, father. Lord Stark, I'm sorry. I won't do it again." "Hush, lad, you're not in trouble, far from it." Jon looked at his father in confusion. If he wasn't in trouble, then why was he asked to come here? Why was Lady Catelyn here? "Jon, Lord Jaime has come to me with a proposal, an offer for your future. He wishes to take you on as a page, and then as a squire. He wants you to earn your knighthood with him." Jon felt his heart swell. A knighthood. He had never imagined such a thing. He looked at his father's smiling face, and then to Lady Catelyn's, whose expression had changed into one he knew all too well, disgust. "Hey, lad, he says he sees great potential in you, that you have it in you to be a great swordsman one day." Lady Catelyn scoffed, and his father shot her a reproving look. Jon couldn't believe what he heard. Him a great swordsman. Jaime had said it to him before, but he figured he was just being nice. But no, he said it to his father too. And wanted him to be a knight, so it must be true, mustn't it? "It'll mean you leaving Winterfell, though. You'd have to travel back with Lord Yagba when he departs, so you can take up your duties." Jon looked between his father and Lady Catelyn again. The words entering his head, he noticed the expressions on both their faces. His father looked sad, while Lady Catelyn had a smile on her face. "That's it. That's how she's punishing me. She's forced father to make me leave, and he convinced Jaime to take pity on his bastard." Jon jumped up from the seat, tears running down his face, and ran to his room. Jon, what's wrong, lad?" But the words were missed to him as he ran towards his room. "Gone. They want me gone. What have I done? Why do they hate me?" He slammed the door shut behind him and fell onto the bed, his tears flowing freely. It took a few moments, but it felt like hours before Jon heard the knocking at his door. He knew it was his father, and as much as he wanted to keep his door shut, he knew he had no choice, so he wiped his face and got up to open the door. He was right there was his father, a worried look on his face. "Lad, what's wrong? Talk to me." "Why are you throwing me out, father? I don't want to go. I want to stay here. Please don't let them take me away." Ned looked at the tear-stricken face of his nephew. He could hear the sniffles in his voice as he spoke. Had he messed even this up, could he do nothing right? "Jon, I'm not and will never throw you out. You hear me, Winterfell is your home. It's yours for as long as you want it to be." You mean it?" "Aye, lad. Of course I mean it." Jon threw his arms around his father, and for the first time since almost he was born, Ned hugged his nephew. He felt him relax against him and felt the sniffling begin to subside. So he decided now was the time to speak to him like he should have in the first place. Having Cat there had been a mistake, he saw that now, but he thought the idea would have pleased Jon had he misread things. He needed to find out. "Jon, the offer from Lord Jaime is real." He felt his nephew stiffen against him. "He really does think you have the potential to be a knight and would like the chance to train you. This isn't about throwing you out. This is a real opportunity for you, Jon. But if it's not what you want, then that's fine. I only want what's best for you." "But I'd have to leave, wouldn't I?" "Aye, you would, lad, but it wouldn't have to be forever. You could come back and visit, and when you're a knight, you could come back for good, if you want. It's up to you, lad." Ned helped him over to the bed. Settling him down, he gave him his warmest smile, pleased to see Jon return it. He tucked him in and ruffled his hair. Getting a small pout that reminded him so much of his mother, he sat down on the bed beside him. "Listen, why don't you sleep on it, okay? Have a word with Lord Yakim in the morning and then decide what you want. If you want to go for it, then do it, and if you want to stay, then do that. No one will force you to do anything you don't want. Jon, I promise you." Ned shuddered softly as the words left his lips. Hopefully he could keep this promise better than the last one. Jon nodded and shut his eyes, the events clearly taking a toll on him, so Ned got up and walked to the door. Looking back, he could see his nephew was already fast asleep. Jon woke up feeling much better. He didn't have to leave if he didn't want to, but did he want to? That was something he wasn't sure about. To become a knight, have a future he dreamed of. Those things. To be away from Winterfell, from Robb, Sansa, little area, and his father, that was the stuff of nightmares. But Winterfell also meant Lady Catelyn. She hated him. She would always hate him. And while his father said he didn't have to leave, she made it hard to want to stay. He needed to talk to Lord Jaime. He needed to know that he wasn't being offered this chance because of pity. If he really did believe in him, then perhaps leaving wasn't so scary. Jaime was nowhere to be found. Had he left already? Did he miss his chance? What would he do if he had left? Jon felt as if he'd messed up completely. If he'd just said yes when his father told him he could have left with him. Instead, he let himself cry like a baby. He was about to do so again. He could feel the tears welling in his eyes. So, there you are. He turned around to see Lord Jaime staring at him intently. Relief filled his heart when he realized he had another chance to take his offer, but the little voice in his head reminded him that it may be because he pitied him. "Hey, you okay, lad? Father told me that you, Mayo." He told you about my offer to have you be my page, did he?" "Yeah," he said. "You thought I could be a knight." "Not just any knight, lad. A true knight, like Ser Arthur Dayne, or Aemon the Dragon Knight." Jon was stunned. Ser Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, Aemon the Dragon Knight, these weren't just knights, these were legends. Ser Arthur was the greatest swordsman that ever lived, and Aemon was the noblest knight ever. "But I'm a bastard." "Is your heart less pure than a true-born, Jon? Is your skill lesser because of your name?" "You think I have skill. Everything I've said to you since I've been here, Jon, has been true, so listen to me now. I've never seen anyone as skilled as you are at your age. Even those who have years on you are less skilled than you. So, young man, what do you say? Do you have it in you to prove them all wrong, to show that you're not just good, but that you can be better than all of them? Will you be my page? Jon Snow?" "Vice." Jon looked at him. He saw the truth in his eyes. He meant it. It wasn't pity or trying to find favor with his father. He was the White Lion of Casterly Rock. Why did he care what wolves thought of him? He wanted to train Jon because he saw something in him, something he wanted to polish and hone, something he saw in no one else. For the first time, Jon felt a sense of pride overwhelm him. "Aye, my lord. It'd be an honor." "Of course it would," Jaime replied before the two started laughing. The king's retinue moved slowly away from the castle. Jaime had placed his own entourage at the rear to allow Jon to say his farewells to his home. He watched as he slowly rode towards him. The expression on his face surprised him. He had thought the boy would be sad, sullen, even. But as he looked at him, he could see excitement in his features. It was an altogether different Jon than the one he'd encountered earlier that day. Earlier that day, Jon and Robb had said their goodbyes, tears shared between them, but both swore to write, and Jon promised to return as soon as he was able. They hugged, and Jon went to say goodbye to the rest of his siblings. He walked to the nursery where little Arya would hopefully be awake. He wanted to look into her eyes as he said goodbye rather than say the words to a sleeping baby. Luckily for him, Arya was an active baby. She'd grow to be a wild little wolf, he thought as he approached the crib. "Hello, little one. It's your big brother, Jon. I love you, little sister, so much. Please don't forget me. I won't forget you." He looked at the babe with tears in his eyes. Young as he was, he knew it was hopeless. The chance that she'd remember him was pretty much not. He doubted even that his name would be spoken if Lady Catelyn got her way. He almost ran from the nursery, his emotions getting the better of him. Sansa was as usual by her mother's side, with Septa Mordan hovering in the background like she always did. Jon nervously approached, the scowl on Lady Catelyn's face easy to read as always. He didn't even need to look at her to know she wore that scowl. She always did when he was around. "What do you want, boy?" I came to say goodbye to my sister." Catelyn glared at him, pulling Sansa tighter to her. "Do it and begone." He approached as closely as he dared and looked down at the little red-haired angel that was his sister. She smiled at him and then frowned. He noticed that her mother had almost yanked her back when she saw the smile on her face. "Sansa, I came to say goodbye." "No. You stay." "I can't, Sansa. I'm going to be a knight. I'm going to miss you, sister." He watched as the little girl nodded before running over to give him a hug, tears filling his eyes as she gripped him tightly. Before he could even begin to let go, though, Lady Catelyn was pulling her daughter from his arms, her face a mixture of hate and disgust that Jon knew only too well. "Very well, boy. You've said your goodbyes. Now go." She turned with Sansa in her arms and walked back to the septa, both women looking satisfied that the bastard would no longer be around to corrupt her precious children. He left the room as quickly as he could without running from it, heading straight to the one place he could be alone and not be bothered. The crypts. It was there later that Jaime found him, crying as he sat in front of the statue of his aunt. Jaime shook his head, clearing the memory as he turned to see Jon looking back at the castle with a last look. "Come, Jon, the rock awaits, and we have a long way ahead of us." Jon smiled at him before they began to ride away. He was excited for the adventure to come, for the new places he would see. He had never even left Winterfell, and now not only was he traveling through the north, but he'd actually be leaving it. A few weeks later, their weeks had flown in. He'd seen places he'd only ever heard about in conversations around Winterfell. They had followed the King's Road and stopped for a night at Castle Cerwyn. It was there they and the King's retinue had parted ways. As Jaime said, they moved too slow for him. Although Jon got the feeling that he really just didn't like the king. The Cerwyns had thrown a feast to celebrate having the king in their castle, and as usual, the king had enjoyed himself to the fullest. Jon sat at the back, surprised that Jaime sat with him, rather than at the high table with the king. Although given how the king behaved, it shouldn't have been that surprising. "You boy, the king wishes to speak to you," the stern Marentrant said as he tugged on his shoulder. "What does he want?" Jaime asked, annoyed by the presence of his former brother. "He wants to speak to the bastard, Kingslayer." He actually had looked ready to split the man open, but Jon just nodded and walked with him to the high table, not wanting to cause any more of a scene than the man had already. He looked around and could see the eyes most in the hall were upon him. It made him uncomfortable. But as he reached the table, he stood as straight as he dared. Let me get a look at you, boy." You're Ned's bastard. All right, off to be a knight, are ya?" Hopefully, your grace." "Kingslayer, where are yak at up here?" Jaime left his seat and reluctantly walked to the front of the hall. A small part of him had worried that the king might recognize someone other than Stark in the boy. But the king saw what he wanted to, and besides the way he was eyeing the bosom of the serving girl, probably had his mind on other things. "Yes, your grace. So, gonna make a knight out of Ned's boy, are you, Kingslayer?" "Undoubtedly, your grace. The boy is talented, just like his father then." "Indeed, your grace. Very much so." "Boy, did you know your father slew Sir Arthur Dayne, killed the damn sword of the morning in single combat? By the gods, what I'd have given to see that fight." Jaime grimaced at the king's words. There was no way in hell Stark could defeat Arthur. Not in single combat, not with numbers on his side. How it had happened he didn't know, but there had to be trickery or underhandedness involved, although given Ned Stark's precious honor, he wasn't sure how that could be. You'll be just as good. No doubt, won't you, boy? I hope so, your grace. Humble just like your old man, a fine knight you'll be. The rest of the night passed quickly, and they had moved on the next morning. They had seen the moat Kaelin, and despite it being in disrepair, Jon could see why no one had ever taken the fortress. They passed through the neck, and Jon was delighted to see lizard lions swimming in the swamp. Although he had made sure not to get too close, he liked his fingers too much. Their travels had gone smoothly, and Jaime had taken the time to speak to him and spar with him. He called him his page, but most of his duties seemed to be those of a squire. Although the armor was too heavy and hard to lift, he still did his best and kept it clean, enjoying the words of praise he received from Jaime for doing so. His favorite times, though, were the stories Jaime would tell after they'd finished sparring. Sarkar faced down the smiling knight, their two swords moving faster and faster, and then with a loud crash, the smiling knight's sword broke. Arthur, chivalrous as ever, paused the fight and allowed him to pick up another sword. "It's you sword I want, Sir Arthur," the smiling knight said, pointing at Dawn. "Then you shall have it," Sir Arthur replied. The two blades clashed again and again. The knight was skilled, but Arthur was an artist. The finest swordsman I've ever seen, perhaps the greatest ever. It was inevitable he would win, and win he did, slaying the smiling knight and bringing to an end the Kingswood Brotherhood. "He knighted you, didn't my lord?" That he did, Jon. Proudest day of my life was being knighted by the sword of the morning, the finest knight, the finest man I ever knew. Ruchiarnimai told Jon more stories as they traveled. He told him of Sar Barristan defeating Meslies, the monstrous ending, the Blackfire line. He told him of the rogue prince jumping from his dragon, Caraxes, to slay Aemond above the god's eye. But it was the tales of Aemond the Dragon Knight that caught Jon's attention the most. A true knight and king's guard. Things continued along in this vein as they passed through the Twins. Jon shuddered as remembered Jaime dealing with Walder Frey and the toll they had to pay to pass. Finally they reached Seaguard, where they would take a ship to Lannisport. The Mollisters were surprisingly welcome considering they were Tully bannermen, and he was the bane of their liege lord's daughter's life. "My lord, why are we taking a ship?" he asked as they waited in a tavern near the docks. "I've been away too long, and it'll be moons more if we travel overland. From here, though, a ship will have us in Lannisport within the moon, and it's just a short ride to the Rock from there." "What's the Rock like, my lord?" How to explain it? It's unlike any castle in Westeros, and I've missed it more than I thought I had. But as for the rest, my boy, well, you're going to have to wait until we get there. Wouldn't want to ruin the surprise now, would I?" He smirked as Jon frowned at him. He ruffled his hair, forcing a smile, and then nudged his shoulder, nearly forcing him to fall to finally get a laugh from him. The time spent on the ship was something he wished he could forget. He wasn't built for sea travel, and Jaime took great pleasure in doing his best to rub it in. Although given how sick he got, he stopped after a while and became concerned for him. It was different for Jon to have someone look after him and worry as much as Jaime did. He brought the cold water and towels to place on Jon's head himself, and even though Jon really didn't want to eat, Jaime made sure he got some food in his stomach every day. When they eventually reached Lannisport, he could almost have kissed the ground. He resolved to never set foot on a ship again if he could help it, but knew that it was likely to be necessary sometime. Lannisport was incredible to see, especially for a boy who thought Wintertown was large. The streets were paved, and the amount of people was mind-blowing. As he walked with Jaime, they were often forced to stop. As people addressed the new Shield of Lannisport, just one of the many titles, Jaime now held. "Good afternoon, my lord." "Pleased to see you, my lord." "Best of health to you, Sir Jaime. My lord." Jaime nodded and smiled where appropriate, but just like he could see the frown on Jon's face, he too was tired of the delays that these niceties caused. He was happy when they finally reached the escort that his uncle Kevin had sent, even more pleased to see Sir Adam was there, but even more pleased to see his uncle Jurion leading it. "Finally the lion returns," his uncle said, his usual sarcasm evident. Looks like I came just in time, uncle. Why, you're looking positively dreadful." "Little Joy has been unwell." "I'm sorry to hear it, uncle." "Well, never mind, it's good to have you back, my lord." He shook his head as his uncle grabbed him in an embrace. If even Jurion was being formal, this was going to be a nightmare. He turned to Jon, who was standing there quietly taking it all in, looking around at the strange city and stranger people. Well, Jurion was strange. Adam not so much. He looked overawed. Uncle, may I introduce my new page and soon-to-be squire? So that's who the lad is. Been wondering that since I got here. Has the look of a northerner. What's your name, lad? Jerian asked as Jon stepped forward. Jon Snow, my lord. Well, young Master Snow, don't let this one overwork you. He bent down to whisper in his ear. He wasn't a very good page himself, you know. Don't let him fool ya. He laughed as he patted the boy on the shoulder. Well, shall we, your brother is waiting, as are your uncle and aunt. Be aware, though, the new lord of Casterly Rock needs to be presented so it'll be a bit of palaver. Never let it be said, we Lannisters are subtle or unassuming, his uncle said before laughing loudly. Now where the hell did I leave my damn horse? Jaime smiled. It was good to be back. Good to see his uncle again. If there was one thing he knew with Jiron around, things wouldn't be dull. They walked to their horses and began the trek to Casterly Rock. He was pleased to see Adam talking to Jon, who looked enraptured listening to him. God knows what tales he'd tell the boy, but still, it was nice of his to take the time. That's Ned Stark's bastard, isn't it? Aye, it is, uncle. How in the hell did you get Ned Stark to let you take his bastard as a page? Actually, scratch that. Why in the hell did you take him as a page? Actually, never mind. I don't want to know. Just tell me this. How are you going to explain it to Kevin and the lords that you have a bastard as a page? I'm the warden of the West, uncle. My days explaining are over. Finally, they crested the small hill, where he knew they see the castle for the first time. He motioned to Adam to send Jon over. As the boy rode towards him, he smiled. This is it. This is where it begins. This is where he fulfills his promise, and God help anyone who tried to stop him. Until as Jon made it to his side, he slowed his horse so they rode together over the hill. As they did, he looked down and pointed in front of him to get Jon's attention. Welcome to the Rock, he said as the castle came into view. Aridin, and I'd like to thank those who've taken the time to review and read this story, and hope you'll continue to do so. I'm open to any comments, how it may improve, what you think of it, or even non-spoilery questions in relation to the plot. There were a couple of questions asked in the reviews, so I'll answer what I can. In Chapter 2, a guest pointed out there's no need to go to White Harbor for Jaime to get to the Rock. This chapter corrects that. But originally the idea was Jaime would go to King's Landing and then home. The King's Landing bit was removed and changed. But I missed the White Harbor reference, so I've corrected it now. In terms of pairings, this is a Jon Margaery story. I get why Arianne or Dany are more to some people's liking, but Dany will be doing basically her canon arc and will only be referenced from time to time until she comes into the story and Arianne and Dorne have a different role. On Dorne Dioli's letter will be more for Jon to come to terms with the fact that she knew, and was fine relatively, with Lyanna Rhaegar. Nothing she could say would influence them to suddenly be fine with Rhaegar's actions or Jon's existence. While I get some may dislike the Tyrells, the pairing itself or be more invested in another one. For me, part of the reason I wanted to do this story was the pairing, so I'll be sticking with it. I do have a plan, which the pairing is essential to. Anime princess, Tywin dying is the butterfly effect. It happening and Jaime visiting Winterfell so soon after it is why it was a little easier for Jaime to put two and two together since he was already thinking of Rhaegar's children. As for Caldwell, Jon's relationship with both her and Ned will be difficult when the truth outs. I'm not a fan of either of them to Bache, but I won't demonize Cat and sanctify Ned in this story. I hope it's realistic when I get to the point of how Jon reacts. As for forgiveness, well, it's a road to be traveled. Tyrion waited anxiously in the courtyard. He stood beside his Uncle Kevin and Aunt Jenna as he looked around. He could see so many people waiting for their new lord to arrive. For Tyrion, though, he was just so excited to see his brother again. He hoped that now his brother was lord, things would be different. Perhaps he'd be appreciated instead of scorned, or perhaps that was too much to hope for. He was losing himself in those thoughts when he heard the sound of horses at the gates. There he was, finally. His brother looked just as he remembered, except he looked happier somehow. Confused, Tyrion noticed the U-boy. Jaime was speaking to, no, not speaking to, joking with. Both were laughing happily. A pang of jealousy went straight to his heart. Who was this boy who could make his brother laugh so? He watched as they finally stopped and got off the horses, his Uncle Jurian smiling and patting the boy on the back as they made their way over to him. Casterly Rock is yours, my lord, Kevin said in a booming voice. Uncle, it's good to be home, he heard Jaime reply before he saw his brother move towards him. Brother, it's good to see you, Tyrion said, a large smile on his face. Tyrion, Jaime smiled a beaming smile before bending down and throwing his arms around him. He whispered into his ear, "I've missed you, brother. I've missed you so much." Tyrion felt his heart expand in his chest. He had always been closest with Jaime. He and Uncle Jurian were the only ones who openly disapproved of how his father treated him, and both always went out of their way to let him know that, small though he might be, he was as much of a lion as either of them. "Aunt Jenna," he heard his brother say, as he moved to embrace his aunt. He had always been more closed off with his emotions, and Tyrion wondered if the death of his father was the reason for his sudden change. As he noticed the young boy nervously watching, he again wondered who he was and why he was here. He looked northern to Tyrion's eyes, but what would his brother be doing with a northern boy? "Friends, it's good to be home. I shall endeavor to be as good as Lord of Casterly Rock, as my father, and vow that we shall all prosper under my stewardship." They walked inside and headed to the Hall of Heroes to pay their respects, Jaime, Kevin, and Jurian leading the way, as Aunt Jaina had been asked by Jaime to find suitable accommodation in the family wing for his new page. "Jon Snow," he said. The boy's name was, and to say Tyrion was intrigued would be an understatement. A new page was to be expected. It to be a northern bastard was shocking, as was rooming him in the family wing. But finding out whose bastard he was proved to be the biggest shock of all. "Whose is the young boy?" his Uncle Kevin asked. "Jon." "Jon?" his uncle questioned. "Yes, Jon Snow, my new page." "You took a bastard as a page." "I took a boy as my page. Which side of the sheets he was born on is irrelevant. But he's a bastard. A lord's bastard. He's Eddard Stark's natural son." Tyrion watched as his uncle looked at Jaime incredulously. He had to admit he felt the same, although the reality of the boy's birth was only part of the reason. "Jaime, you can't have a bastard as your page, no matter who his father is. You're the Lord of Casterly Rock, the Warden of the West. You're not a Kingsguard anymore. You can't just do as you like. You have responsibilities." "I beg to differ with you, Uncle. It's because I'm Lord I can in fact do as I like." "What was it, Father?" would say. "What does a lion care about the opinions of sheep?" "Jaime, that was different. You are not your father." "Thankfully so." Kevin looked ready to burst. Tyrion watched as his other uncle rolled his eyes before stepping in to diffuse the tension. "We can discuss this later. We're here to pay our respects. We should do so respectfully," Jarrow grumpily said as he moved to Caven's side. The four of them walked in silence until they reached the large golden doors of the Hall of Heroes. He had been down here only twice since his father's body had been interred. Each time his feelings had been difficult to quantify. He was sad. He knew that, but a part of him, an almost larger part, if he was being truthful with himself, felt nothing at all. "Why did you take so long to return?" "We had planned to do a large service when the remains arrived, expecting that you would return with them." Kevin moved towards the sarcophagus with an almost reverential look. In his eyes, "The king invited me to Winterfell. I felt it would be unwise to refuse him. He would have understood. He's a fat, stupid man. What he understands doesn't concern me, but appearances are necessary." He watched as Jaime placed his hand on the stone, rubbing it tenderly, but it was the look in his eyes that caught Tyrion's attention. He didn't look sad. Far from it. He almost looked happy. No, that wasn't it. What was that look? "Uncles, if I may have a moment with my brother alone." Both his uncles nodded and left at Jaime's request. He stood there watching as they left before Jaime came over to him and knelt down, grabbing him in another tight embrace. Tyrion could feel the tears begin to pool in his eyes. This was all he ever wanted, a family that loved him. They stayed like that for a few minutes, until Jaime finally let him go. "Come, little brother, we have much to discuss." "Do we?" "Of course we do. Your new role for one." Your new role as the Castellan of Casterly Rock." "What? But Uncle Kevin." "Will have his own important duties, but who better than to serve as my Castellan than the cleverest brother a man could ever hope to have?" Jaime sighed as they left his solar. His solar, it felt strange, considering it was practically where his father had lived for most of his life. Tywin would spend hours in here, doing God knows what. Was it here he planned the reigns of Castamere? Here he wrote the orders to kill Elia and her children. The thought made him want to vomit, looking around the room. It began to feel claustrophobic. The lion sculptures, the tableaus, the gold, all of it threatened to overwhelm him. He had to get out, he had to clear his mind, and he knew exactly how to do it. He walked down the hallway to where Jon's rooms, where he had specifically asked for Jon to be given the best available rooms in the family wing, and was pleased to see they had indeed done so. As he entered, he saw him standing there, a dumbfounded look on his face. As he took it all in, after a few minutes, he coughed to alert Jon. He was there. My lord, this is a mistake, right? No mistake, Jon. These are your rooms for as long as you're staying here. But they can't be. This has to be a mistake. Yaxley Sayre laughed at the boy's confusion. He didn't mean to, but it was just funny to him. A king thinking an above-average room was more than he deserved. The laugh petered out quickly, though when he thought of the reason why, that damn trout. Jon, trust me, these rooms aren't even that special. Besides, you're my page now. I need you to be close to my own rooms. And these were the only ones available. Jaime grimaced as he said the words, but it was the best he could do for now. It wasn't like he could tell him the truth yet. Now, how about we have a little spar before dinner? Jon's face lit up and they headed down to the training area. No doubt they'd soon attract a crowd. People eager to see the boy Jaime had decided to take under his wing. To see how worthy he was, Uncle Jurian would probably turn up, ready to take the piss as always. But he was an honest man, and Jaime knew if it was just Jon's parentage and not his talent that blinded him, then Jurian would question him. Move Jon, quicker than that, to the side. Now, back again. Again, that's it. That's the way. Shomye had beamed at him as he followed his directions. The lad's got some talent. I'll give you that. Jurian had said as he watched Jon spar with one of the older boys. Just as he did, he saw Jon give a stunning riposte that forced the older boy to falter. Within seconds, he had yielded. A lot of talent. Jon had sparred for almost 2 hours. Almost one of it entirely with Jaime. He was surprised how many people were watching, but then realized off course they'd be eager to see their lord. But he noticed some had their attention on him, so he pushed through his tiredness and tried to listen to Jaime's running instructions. When he had been asked to spar against some of the recruits, he had been nervous, but Jaime just nodded and touched his shoulder. Show them, Jon, show them who you'll be. Jaime had said, and he did. He beat most of them with only the ones too strong or too old managing to put him down. He had bumps and bruises from where some of the hits had landed, but seeing the pride on Jaime's face made the pain hurt a little less. Jon felt happier than he had in a long time. The journey, the places he had seen had been amazing, but it was nothing compared to the rock itself. The castle was carved out of the mountain. It soared into the air, further than Jon could see. To get to the main castle they had to take a lift, which was an experience in itself. As if that wasn't enough to excite the boy's imagination, the sounds that echoed through the cliffs below were incredible. Thunderous noise that in Jon's fevered imagination sounded like lions roaring. Hear me roar indeed, he thought as he readied himself for bed. The people he had met were friendly, if not a little suspicious. Kevan and Jenna were polite but barely paid him attention. Jurian was funny and didn't seem to take things seriously. He hadn't really spent much time with Tyrion, and was looking forward to do so. Jaime's stories of his little brother had intrigued him, but as usual it was Jaime he was happiest to spend time with. Their spar had been fun. He'd tried some of the things Jaime had taught him, and one or two had come off really well, especially against the other boys he'd sparred against. Tyrion sat at the table beside Jaime, the two laughing and joking and reliving old times. The night had been moving along really well when he decided to ask the thing he'd been thinking about most of the day. Just why was Ned Stark's bastard squiring or paging or whatever he was doing for Jaime? So, brother, why the hell did you pick a northern bastard to be your page? Tyrion asked, noticing immediately the way his brother grimaced at the word bastard. Jon's a very talented lad. Still a bastard, though. Tyrion couldn't help himself. He wanted to push Jaime to see if he might open up. What he is doesn't matter. It's who he is that counts. Ah, you mean because he's a Stark bastard? No, I mean because he has potential to be a great man. Potential that some would rather let wither under the yoke of being a bastard. Tyrion was about to say something else, but when he saw the look on Jaime's face, he decided not to. He'd provoked him by calling the lad a bastard for some reason, and while he wanted to know what the reason really was, he didn't want to do it at the cost of annoying his brother. He'd only just got him back after all. You really think that highly of the lad? Aye, I do, brother. Then I shall endeavor to be his friend. Tyrion said as Jaime smiled at him. He'd figure it out eventually, and it would be nice to have an actual friend, so it was a win for him. Besides, it made his brother happy, which in Tyrion's mind was worth anything. Tyrion walked into the hall to break his fast. He grabbed a plate of burned black bacon and a mug of hot mulled wine and made his way over to the table, where his uncle Jurian was currently regaling Jon in some grand tale or another. judging by the look on the boy's face. He was lapping it up. But then he and Jaime had been the same every time Tyrion told a story. "Ah, finally decided to grace us with your presence." "Have you?" he heard his uncle's voice as he sat down. "Why, uncle, you know better than anyone I'm not a morning person. Allow me to introduce young Master Snow to you." "Jon! Jon Snow, my lord," Jon said, holding his hand out. "Tyrion, it's just Tyrion." He smiled at the boy, trying to make him comfortable. It worked as the boy gave him a small smile back. "And how are you finding the rock, Jon?" "It's different. I've never seen a castle built into the mountain before, and the sounds, they're amazing," the boy enthusiastically said. "Then, perhaps after we break our fast, I could show you around." "Thank you, my lord." "Tyrion, Jon, just Tyrion." "Okay, Tyrion," Jon said with a smile. After they broke their fast, Tyrion left to visit Joy and Tyrion, and Jon began their tour around the rock. He showed him the stables that his father had been so proud of, the armory which perked Jon's interest, the maester's rooms which Jon remarked were larger than Lewin's at Winterfell. They walked along the corridors to the golden galley where its gilded walls and golden ornaments had the boys' mouths open in awe. Once they'd toured most of the upper parts, Tyrion took Jon down to the vaults, showing him where once they kept actual lions and getting a smile from the boy before he finally took him to the stone garden the rock's gods would. "I didn't think you'd have a weirwood here," Jon said, the delight evident in his face, even though the tree was tiny compared to the one in Winterfell. "My father always refused to allow it to be torn down. Although we follow the Seven, I'm sorry for your loss, Tyrion." "No matter." Their tour over, Tyrion and Jon headed back to the training area. Tyrion decided to stay and watch the boys spar with Jurian, and was surprised to see just how good he was. Small and young, obviously. But the talent was there, no doubt. He wondered briefly if this was the reason Jaime had taken him under his wing, but quickly dismissed it. There was something else about the boy, something beneath the surface, something he would find out, but he was glad to spend time with Jon either way. The truth was, he found he liked the boy. Thanks again to those who've read and reviewed this story. The next chapter will be up tomorrow, and we'll be taking a trip from the rock and finding out people's reactions to Tywin's death. Jaime being Lord and his new bastard page. Immortal Wizard. As I said, I'm not the biggest Ned fan. I believe he suffered a form of PTSD from the war, and while that makes some allowances for him, he was a terrible lord and a worse uncle. He barely did anything to improve the North. He prepared his family terribly, both education-wise and in solidifying relationships within the North. He pandered to Cat by not only building a sept in Winterfell, but allowing his children to be taught by a septa. And even after betrothing, Sansa never thought to perhaps organize his son and heir's marriage. Both as a Lord of Winterfell and as a Stark emo, he failed terribly. And while the PTSD is a contributory factor, it's not an excuse. In relation to Jon, he made no plans whatsoever for him. The whole keeping him safe is baloney. Where's safer, the heart of the North or fostering him out somewhere? Maybe Greywater Watch, that mystical keep that no one can find, of course, can't send him there since Howland knows the truth. But instead he allows Jon face scorn from his wife and be treated as lesser than his son. Remember, Jon called him Lord Stark as much as he called him father. None of the other children did this. I firmly believe he promised to protect him and did the barest minimum to cover his honor, not telling Jon who his mother is, and only agreeing to do so once he swore his life away. Shows that he was protecting Robert more than he did Jon. The Night's Watch fights wildlings and is full of criminals, yet it's safer for Jon than a keep or position with one of his bannermen is BS. But it does have the advantage of ending Rhaegar's line and removing a potential threat to his bestest friend in the whole world. Cat was a terrible person. She was a mother who treated a motherless child terribly, not physically, but emotionally. She stunted his growth, and if it were modern times, Jon would be in therapy trying to deal with his lack of self-worth because of her. However, given her upbringing and education and Ned's reluctance to discuss things, he was right, though. She'd have sold Jon out, given the chance. Seriously, Sansa Arya are hostages. Yep, here's a dragon for you. Her actions fit in with how she would have been expected to act. There's so much more I could go into regarding both of them, but I'd end up derailing my own thread, so if you wish to discuss it, PM me and I'll go into it more. Winterfell. Ned felt frustrated. It had been almost a year since Jaime Lannister had taken Jon away, and while he'd received a couple of ravens, the news had been sparse. He barely got the most basic of details. Father, I am well. The Rock is an amazing place. The people are treating me well, and my training is coming along. Jaime has me sparring with the older boys, and I'm holding my own. How is everyone? Is Robb still keeping up his training? Has Arya started to speak yet? Does Sansa still like ribbons? I miss them all so much, you two, Father. Love. Your son, Jon. Father, I received your raven. It gladdens me to hear that you are all well. I'm doing fine. I've started my lessons with Maester Krellin. They're really insistent. He's teaching me languages like High Valyrian and teaching me all about the southern houses. My other training has come along really well. I'm even learning to play the harp. Tyrion and I have paid a number of visits to Lannisport, and he's shown me how the city trades with others. I hope everyone is well there. Please give my love to Robb, Sansa, Arya, and baby Bran. Love. Your son, Jon? Ned didn't know how to feel reading the letters. It was good, of course, that Jon was learning things, and it seemed he was thriving now. He left Winterfell. But the things he was learning concerned him: trade, High Valyrian, southern politics, and the damn harp. Just what the hell was Lannister playing at? Ned, his wife's voice called as she entered the solar. Ah, you are here. Oh, sorry, Cat. Is there something wrong? No, it's just Robb was about to take his archery lessons, and I know you like to watch. Oh, sorry, I was lost there for a minute. Why don't I put these away and we can go together? Ned noticed the grimace on his wife's face when she saw what he'd been reading. She pursed her lips as if to say something, but then obviously thought better of it. No doubt she'd been ready to make some complaint about Jon, even though he was no longer here. It still didn't seem to be enough for her. Out of sight, out of mind was not in Cat's vocabulary. He sighed as he placed the letters away. Shall we? Of course, my lord. Pentos! Lordio read the letter with great interest. Tywin Lannister was dead, the great lion no more, and he couldn't help but smile. He motioned to the Lozny girl, and she poured the wine as he waited for his guest. He disliked Connington immensely, but needs must, and he was needed to keep Griff safe. He knew the man would enjoy the news of the lion's demise, but for Illyrio, the only satisfaction he took from it was that it would make things easier. Jon walked through the gates of the manse. He had left the shy maid near Gayandrahe as it was the closest point to Pentos, and he didn't wish to be away from Akon for too long, but the note from the Magister had said the news was important. So he had rushed here and was tired from the journey. He followed the dark-haired slave that was Illyrio's housekeeper and made his way into the courtyard to find Illyrio waiting. And as usual eating. Come, my friend, you must be famished from your journey. I'm fine, Magister. What's so important you take me away from my duties? News, Griff. News from Westeros. Jon felt his heart beat faster. Had the usurper fallen? Did the damn Ironborn get him? Surely not, but the smile on Illyrio's face meant something big had happened. He sat down and nodded to the Lucierni for something to drink. The girl moved quickly and gracefully, filling his glass, and also a plate with fruit and cheese. Just in case he was hungry. He abhorred slavery, but at times like these, he saw the benefits over the paid servants of his homeland. Efficiency really was easier to instill when the consequences were severe. So, what is this news? He asked gruffly. Tywin Lannister is dead. Jon almost choked on his wine. While not as good as if it had been the usurper himself, this was probably the best news he had heard since he found out that Aegon lived. Tywin's betrayal was the worst of all of them. Oh, Stark, Aaron, Tully, and Baratheon were all guilty and would pay dearly, but what the Lannisters did was unforgivable. How? He was killed during the fighting on Harlaw against the Ironborn. Some men snuck into his camp and caught the old lion unawares. He killed 2 of them, but it was no use. They gutted him and would have took his head. But the alarm was raised. Jon did something he rarely did. He laughed. Loudly and for a long time. He just laughed. Highgarden. Olenna looked out on the spread for her granddaughter's name day celebrations, like with most things. Mace had his hands in it. It was elaborate. Overly so, Olenna thought, considering the girl was just reaching her 7th name day, but sometimes it wasn't worth fighting with her fool of a son. She looked over to her grandsons. Wellis was talking with Garland about the upcoming Lannisport tourney. A tourney to celebrate the victory over the Greyjoys, and as a memorial to Tywin, she almost smiled at the thought that the old lion was dead. Without the lion guiding them, the Lannisters would find their influence dwindling. Oh, Cersei may be queen, and there would be Lannister blood on the throne. But Jaime Lannister cared more for swords than politics and would be too dumb to block whatever moves Olenna made. She noticed her granddaughter entering the room, her eyes wide as she saw the large spread of sweet desserts and pastries they'd laid out for her. "Happy name day, my love," Ellery said as she walked with her daughter to the high table. "Is this all for me, Mama?" "Well, we should probably share some with your friends, shouldn't we?" Ellery smiled at the overeager girl. Olenna watched as they moved to where Mace was grinning like a fool at times. She couldn't believe that he was her son. If she had been a man, she'd never have believed that he could be from her loins. Alas, she knew, unfortunately, that he was most definitely hers. She saw Loras enter with his friend. Their closeness seemed odd. Perhaps something to worry about later, she thought, before Margaery came over to show her some trinket or other that Willis and Garland had given her. "Look, Grandmama, isn't it lovely?" "It's beautiful, my dear, just like you." "Would you like my present now or later, my sweet girl?" "Later, Grandmama. It'll be better that way." "Of course, my dear." Olenna smiled as Margaery turned to her friends and walked to where her aunts and uncles sat. The girl charmed the room with ease. Sure, it was her name day, and of course she'd be the center of attention. But Margaery had something special, something intangible, and it drew people to her. Olenna motioned to her bodyguards left and right, and began her own working of the room. Margaery made her way to her grandmother's solar. The party had been fun, but it dragged on and on. Her father really did know how to celebrate, she thought, as she saw her grandmother giant bodyguards standing guard. Eric and Eric were their names, but her grandmother called them left and right, and it never failed to get a smile from her. She knocked on the door and entered as she was bid. The room itself was large and nothing like her father's. Where his was full of gold trimmings and paintings, her grandmother's was simpler, much more imposing, especially the dark wood of the large desk that occupied the room. Her grandmother would hold court there, but for more intimate meetings, she would use the small sitting room, which was where Margaery found her. "Grandmama, come here, my sweet child. Did you enjoy your celebration?" "Yes, Grandmama, it was fun, but tiring." "Well, we know who's to blame for that, don't we?" Father Margaery said before they both laughed together. "Indeed, now come here and let me give you your presents." "Presents, Grandmother." Olenna took the two small packages from the table to her left and handed them to her granddaughter. One practical and one simply because she felt the girl deserved an extra one. She watched as Margaery opened the packages, a look of confusion on her sweet face. The first present was a small gold necklace adorned with tiny rubies shaped into roses. She noticed the smile that lit up her face before she quickly opened the second. The book was small but precise. It was Maester Augus's History of the Fall of Great Houses. She watched as Margaery immediately began to look through the book and couldn't help to smile to see her eagerness to read it. "This is wonderful, Grandmother, absolutely wonderful," Margaery said before hugging her tightly. "I knew you'd like it, dear." Olenna smiled at her granddaughter. She was everything she hoped she'd be, clever, charming, witty, with a keen mind that she wished to develop. She'd make a great queen one day, and Olenna would do everything in her power to ensure she sat the throne. She raised her wine glass and looked at the girl. Growing strong, Grandmother. Bravos." Sarzir Willem lay in the bed. He was dying, and he knew it, and yet that wasn't what he feared. It was the fate of the princess and king that weighed heaviest on his heart. He had tried his best, done everything he could to ensure their safety and comfort, and for almost 7 years he had been successful. But the sickness had come on too quickly, and he hadn't been able to set things in motion for once he was gone. He took little comfort in the news that had reached him. Tywin Lannister was dead, killed by a damn reaver. But he hoped the old lion suffered. He deserved it for his monstrous actions, to kill the children that way. Apparently his son Jaime was now Warden of the West, and even thinking of the man forced bile into his throat. Aerys may have deserved to die, but an oath is an oath, and a Kingsguard killing a king deserved to rot in the 7 hells. The little princess sat at the edge of the bed, and Willem hated to see the fear in her eyes. It would be up to her brother now to protect her, and he hoped he'd done a good job in teaching the boy, and the glimpses of Aerys he'd seen in him were just the mistaken remembrances of an old man. "Sir Willem," the little voice said. "Princess, oh my sweet princess, you should not be here. But you are poorly, Sir Willem, and it's the job of a princess to make you better." "Thank you, my princess. Thank you." He coughed and spluttered and held her hand tightly. "Where is the king?" "The servants are arguing with him. I don't know what's going on. her voice cracked as she looked to the door. "You must stick together, princess. You and the king, you're the last of your family." He watched as the little girl nodded before his coughing came on again. He knew it was time, and it tore his heart to think he'd failed. "Go find your brother, my sweet princess. Together you'll be safe." She got up from the bed and kissed him on the cheek before running from the room. His coughing got worse, and his breath harder to find. He gripped the sheet tightly and coughed, feeling the blood as it dripped down his face. And with his final breath, he besieged the gods. "Protect her, I beg you." King's Landing. The small council meeting dragged on and on. The king's return hadn't lessened the load any, and Jon grimaced at the directives. A tourney, of course, he wanted a damn tourney. He wanted one to celebrate the most minor events, and beating the Greyjoys wasn't minor. But the cost, as usual, was what bothered Jon. The gold would need to come from somewhere, and he hoped that the new Lord of Casterly Rock was as accommodating as the old. Perhaps he should bring Lysa's friend from Gulltown to court. The boy had a way with numbers. He'd managed to turn the port's finances around significantly and increase them massively. Plus, it would please his wife to have her young friend close in court. With how busy he was, he had been neglecting his wife. Yes, he thought, he'd send a raven to young Peter as soon as he could. He looked around the room and wished he was elsewhere. Being Robert's hand was a time-consuming affair, especially considering Robert's aversion to actually ruling. Oh, he'd lead troops into battle and feast and throw tourneys to his heart's content, but rule, actually take an interest in the daily workings of the realm, no, that was beneath the man. "So, another tourney, is it?" Stannis said in his usual grumpy tone. "It's what the king wants," Jon replied. He watched as Stannis frowned, his teeth grinding even more than usual. Varys sat there, the same blank expression on his face he always had when he held no interest in the things they discussed. Although Jon noticed something else on the eunuch's face, and couldn't quite place it, he was just about to call an end to the meeting when surprisingly Pycelle spoke up. "My lords, I received a raven from Casterly Rock earlier, from Lord Jaime. It seems that he intends to throw his own tourney at Lannisport in memory of his father, and to also celebrate the victory over the Ironborn." Jon looked at the man incredulously. They had been going round and round about this damn tourney for the past week, and this fool hadn't bothered to mention the damn Lannisters were holding their own. He was about to berate the man before suddenly it hit him. They could kill two birds with one stone. The king would get his tourney and the Lannisters would pay for it. Okay, it would have to be in Lannisport, but the king would go along with it, as long as he gave him a reason. "Very good, Grandmaster. I shall need to send a raven to Lord Lannister when we're done here." "Of course, Lord Hand." He noticed the smug smile on Pycelle's face, and dearly wished to wipe it off, but he thought better of it as Varys began to speak. "I hear Lord Jaime has taken on a new page," he tittered. "What's that got to do with anything?" Stannis asked irritably. "Well, it's who the new page is that's interesting. Identifying pages, is that what the Master of Whispers is busy with?" "My lord Stannis, when said page happens to be the bastard of Winterfell. My birds begin to sing." Jon coughed. Did he hear that right? Had Ned allowed his bastard to be Jaime Lannister's page? Surely this was wrong, a mistake. Ned would never place his son with a Lannister. This was strange. He'd have taken the boy if asked, or surely a bannerman of Ned's. "Are you sure about that, Lord Varys?" he asked. Uncertain, Lord Hand. The king and he traveled for a while before they went in their separate directions. Robert knew of this. "I would expect so, my lord." Later that day he entered the king's quarters. The room was a mess, and Robert was sitting alone. He thanked the gods for that, having spent too many times waiting while the king sent his ladies away. Robert was drinking, though, and Jon sighed nothing. He could say would change the man, it seemed. "Your Grace." Jon, come sit, have a drink." "No, I'm fine, Your Grace." "Oh, piss on that, Jon, it's just the two of us." "None of that Your Grace bullshit." "Of course, Robert. Now that's better. So what brings you here? Did you organize the tourney?" "Well, about that, it seems Jaime Lannister is throwing a tourney." "Damn the Lannisters. It's my tourney, I won the damn war." "Of course you did, Robert, but Jaime wants to throw one in memory of his father." "Well, let him. 2 tourneys are better than 1. "Robert, we can't afford a tourney, however," Jon quickly added, seeing the anger begin to build on Robert's face. "If the Lannisters throw one and are paying for it, then you as guest of honor would still be the most important person there." "But it won't be mine, Jon, it'll be theirs." Jon almost grimaced at the petulance of the man. Still a boy, really. He wanted what he wanted, and if someone else had it, then he wanted it more, he thought. before quickly shaking those thoughts from his head. We'll need to go anyway, Robert. The man was your good father, and you'll have to show your respects. Damn it, Jon, would it not be easier for them just to pay and have it here? It would, but this is in Tywin's memory. It must be in Lannisport. Fine, then I'll go. I suppose the Queen and her damn wheelhouse will need to accompany us. Jon sighed. Sometimes the sheer lack of empathy Robert could show staggered him. He had raised him better than that. Raising him and Ned was the proudest thing he had even done, yet only one of them had been raised a good man. It's her father, Robert. Fine, fine, the king said as he took another swallow of his drink. Jon turned and left, unable to spend time with the man he considered his son. The whispers his little birds had brought him concerned him greatly. Sir, Willem was ill, maybe dying. He wondered if perhaps he and Illyrio should move their plans up. Without protection, the prince and princess were vulnerable, and if anything should happen to them, then it could set them back years. He wrote out his note and dressed to walk to the port. He would send his friend a letter and await the response. There was little else he could do from here. Walking through the streets of King's Landing, Varys cut a strange figure. The beard and shaggy hair, along with the rough nature of his clothes, made him out to be a weary traveler or a man of limited means. But his walk, despite his best efforts, still made him out to be a noble. He moved as quickly as he could and entered into the side streets, feeling much more comfortable walking and working in the shadows. He soon arrived at the tavern. "Hello, old friend," he spoke as he moved to the table in the back. "Ugh, my good friend, Aladaxid. It is good to see you again," the large, stocky man said to him. Varys had lost count of how many different names he'd used over the years. "I have a message for our friend in Pentos." "Of course, my friend. My captain sails on the morrow." Good, good. And you are well." "Akas." "Alagrius, I am as well as can be. We have earned good coin on this trip and no trouble. And the ale here is most pleasant. For your troubles, should they ever arrive," Varys said, tossing the small pouch to the man before handing over the letter. "This will help, my friend, as always. Be well." "You too." Varys quickly left the tavern. In his business it didn't bear well to stick in the one place too much. As he waked back to the Red Keep, he considered the other piece of news that was on his mind. Jaime Lannister's new page was not normally something he'd consider intriguing, but said page, being Jon Snow, perked his interest. Just why would Ned Stark let his son page for a Lannister? The issue confounded him the whole journey back to his rooms. He'd need to set his little birds a task, it seems. Cersei. Lannister? Cersei was annoyed. Well, that was an understatement. She was furious, and had been ever since the fat oaf had returned from dealing with the damn Ironborn. The fact that he hadn't wiped them from the face of the earth, once her father had fallen, had caused no end of vases to be broken in both her and the fat oaf's quarters. When she had heard the news, she had been stunned. Surely it was a lie. A cruel joke. Her father was invincible. A lion. Everyone bowed to lions. But he had fallen, and he was gone. She then hoped to speak to Jaime when he returned. Surely, with their father gone, they could be together again. They were destined two parts of the same whole, and yet in what had been her greatest moment of triumph when she finally became what she was born to be, he had abandoned her. "We're supposed to be, we belong together." "No, we don't. We never did." "You love me, Jaime. I'm the only woman you'll ever love." "Perhaps, but I'll never love you again." "Why?" "Because of the damn dragon spawn." "They were children, Cersei." "Children." Just thinking back on it flamed her fury, and she looked around for something to throw. Not finding anything, she instead poured another glass of wine and stewed in her anger. It had been a mistake to tell him she knew of father's plans. She knew that now, but she had expected he'd get over it in time. How wrong she'd been. He refused her time and time again. She had other lovers, of course, but it was supposed to be the two of them against the world. It was supposed to be their children, not just hers. She loved Joffrey more than anything. He was her golden prince, her special baby boy. But he was supposed to be hers and Jaime's, and instead she had to seduce her damn uncle. Teget was a good lover, though, and eager to share her bed once he saw her naked. But Jaime he wasn't, and it hurt her every time she looked at Joff to know what could have been. "Your Grace, is there anything you need?" the young girl asked. "No, go, begone." She watched the girl scurry from the room and went right back to her wine. She heard her husband's footsteps outside the door and swallowed and quickly filled another glass. Hopefully she'd be drunk enough before he took her. As she woke the next morning, her head felt heavy. The fool had barely managed to stay erect, and she'd finished him with her hand as she had countless times before. She would bear him no children, that was what Maggie had told her. 6 and 10 for him and 3 for her. She had convinced herself then they'd be chamois, but Joff hadn't, and it confused and annoyed her. Your Grace, Your Grace. Her handmaidens entered and quickly got her bath ready. After they washed and dressed her, she went to break her fast, hoping her husband was elsewhere. She was lucky finding only Joffrey and his sworn dog in the small family hall. Blanda was outside, and she was glad of it. She disliked the way the man looked at her, as if she'd ever with a common guard. Mother, my sweet boy, she kissed his cheek and sat down, breaking her fast on fruit and washing it down with some Dornish sour. Your Grace, the Grand Maester is here to see you, Blount said, while not discreetly staring at her cleavage. Send him in. She watched as the old fool staggered and stumbled into the room. She wondered if he really believed anyone, both this mummer's act of his. But as he began to speak, she instead felt her heart begin to quicken. Your Grace, I have a letter from Casterly Rock addressed to you. Hand it here, her impatience beginning to show. Piso handed her the letter and seemed to wish to hang around. She had no wish to spend any more time than necessary with the old fool, so dismissed him, eager to read the missive. Had Jaime wrote to her? Was he missing her as much as she missed him? Perhaps a visit home was required. Disappointingly, she read the letter to find that they were having a tourney in memory of father, a damn tourney. They wrote to her for a tourney. Who did they think she was, Robert? She tore the letter up and threw it on the table, reaching over for her glass. She drank it in one gulp before refilling it. She was about to do the same to the second, when a thought came to her. One that quickly made her smile as she looked at Joffrey, who seemed confused. Her smile grew bigger. 3 children. The witch had said, and she only had one. She could do nothing about that but the second. Joff, my love, we're going to go visit your uncle. The last few moons had flown in for Jon. He'd been kept busy with lessons, sparring, and with his work as a page for Jaime. Surprisingly, he found that most of this included attending Jaime in meetings, and while he occasionally filled glasses of wine or got refreshments for the guests, he usually spent the meeting standing by Jaime's shoulder while Jaime held court. Today, though, he was given a free day. Jaime would do this every so often, just give him a day to explore the rock, speak to people, read, or whatever he wanted. Jaime said he needed to enjoy things as much as he needed his lessons. The lessons he took were completely different than the ones he took in Winterfell. Here he learned about running a castle, about trade. He learned about the houses of the kingdoms and their relationship to each other, and who their bannermen were. The lessons which confused him the most were when Jaime instructed him to learn High Valyrian and the harp. Why do I need these, my lord? You need to be well-rounded, Jon. It can't all be facts and figures or warfare and fighting. A man needs to be cultured also. But the harp, my lord... What's wrong with the harp, Jon? A good bard would have all the ladies of the land swooning. I'm a bastard, my lord. No lady will swoon for a bastard. Jon, if only you knew. Let me let you in on a little secret. While some will care which side of the sheets you're born on, others will not. Your deeds, your accomplishments, that'll be what defines you. Not whether you're noble or true-born. Do you understand, Jon? Jaime asked. I think so, my lord. Good then, the harp, it'll be my young friend, and I expect good things from you. So Jon had taken his lessons and found to his shock that the harp came as easy to him as swordplay. Now just a few moons into the lessons, and he could play most of the songs he knew, and some he hadn't ever heard of. He'd even started messing around with notes and making his own songs up. None were any good, he thought. But he felt relaxed when playing, almost as if a sense of peace came over him. He walked down the hall hoping to find Tyrion. They had become fast friends, the older man's wit and intelligence sparking something in Jon. It was because of Tyrion that he found himself taking books from the Rock's library and reading at night, something he had never done in North. A mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone. If it's to keep its edge, that is why I read so much. Tyrion had said, and Jon couldn't help agree with him. He found that he enjoyed reading, and the discussions and debates he had with Tyrion about some of what he read had brought the two even closer. As he reached Tyrion's room, though, he was disappointed to find it empty. He thought about going looking for him, but he heard a muffled sound of crying and headed in that direction instead. The room he entered was some sort of a nursery. There on the ground was a little blonde girl. She couldn't have been more than 2 name days old, and she was sitting on her own sobbing. Jon moved over to the girl and sat down beside her. She looked at him, her green eyes filled with tears, but her sobbing had stopped. Hello. My name is Jon, he quickly added as the girl looked at him. Yakin, she threw her sniffles. Yes, Jon, are you hungry? No. Play, Jon, play. You want me to play with you? The girl nodded enthusiastically. Jon looked around the room, finally finding some stuffed lions and some dolls. He moved to go over to them, but the young girl grabbed his arm. No, Yacht, stay, he smiled at her and reached his hand out to her. She looked at him confused before taking his hand, and they both went over to where the stuffed toys were. Grrr, he said as he moved the lion towards her, the little girl laughing now. Grrr, I'm a lion. No, Jon, no lion. Jon. She giggled at him as she backed away, so he picked up a doll and handed it to her. Noticing the smile she gave get even bigger. What's her name? He asked. Yatshad. No, that's my name. What's Dolly's name? Yajo. You want to call the dolly Joy? He said as the girl nodded vigorously. Is that your name? He pointed at her. Joy. She nodded before she pointed at him. Yaxley. The two played for almost an hour before the maid entered the room. He noticed Joy's expression change from happy to sad almost immediately. I'm sorry, my lord. I just stepped out for a moment, the maid said clearly, not expecting anyone to be here. I've been here an hour, you're lying. I'm sorry, my lord. It's fine. I'll look after Joy until her father gets here. You'll no longer be required. Please, my lord, I needs this job. My family, this is all we... You can work somewhere else in the castle, but you'll no longer be left in charge of a babe you can't take care of. Thank you, my lord. Thank you so much, the girl said before running from the room. Jon turned back to Joy to notice her smile was back on her face. He picked up the lion again and watched as she squealed as he moved towards her. The two of them played around before he heard a rumble come from her stomach. You hungry? Yawning. Yep, Jon will take you for some food. Little one. He stood up and offered her his hand, and as she took it, he lifted her up and swung her around. The giggles he got for it stirred something in his heart. He carried the girl and made his way down to the kitchen, noticing the stares he got from some of the servants and guards on the way. He continuously spoke to her as they walked, and by the time they reached the kitchen, she was resting her head on his shoulder. I came to get some food for young Joy here, he said to the small dark-haired cook. Of course, my lord, right away. I don't really know what she eats, though. That's fine, my lord. I usually prepare Joy's meals myself. I know what the young miss likes. Jon sat down at the small table. He tried to put Joy in the seat beside him, but the little girl clung to him, so eventually he sat her on his lap and began to feed her. The meal the cook had prepared, it was nothing fancy, just some soft fruits mashed together, but the girl seemed to really enjoy it, although she was messy, and Jon found himself covered in as much of the meal as she had eaten. But there you are. I heard someone had stolen my child and ran off with her. Never did I think it would be you, Master Snow. Jon worriedly turned at the sound of the voice, only to see Gerion's smiling face. I'm sorry, my lord. It was just she was. Papa. Hello, my little angel. Coming to Papa? No, Papa. Yon? Yeah, Jan. Yarden Joy emphatically said before Jerian smiled at them both before he began to speak to Jon. Jon, I'm not mad at you, confused. Not mad. Care to explain? Of course, my lord. I was walking past the nursery, and I heard a sound, and when I entered, Joy was alone and upset, so I sat with her. We played, and then the maid came back. I dismissed her and played some more with Joy before she got hungry, and we came down here. Why did you dismiss the maid, Jon? She wasn't looking after Joy, my lord. I was there for a long while, and Joy was on her own. When she came back, Joy didn't seem to want to be in her company, so I stayed and sent her away. I'll have that girl's job. She was supposed to look after my daughter, not abandon her. Geryon angrily said, My lord, please don't do that. I promised the girl she'd be reassigned. She can work elsewhere. Don't let her go. Very well, Jon, but I'm doing this for you, not her. Thank you, my lord. After finishing the rest of the meal with Jerion constantly calling Jon the best nursemaid ever, much to his annoyance, the three of them got up and left the room, Joy holding her arms out for Jon to carry her. As they walked to the nursery, Jon could feel the little girl begin to nap on his shoulder. He looked to her father to see him looking at him with what looked like gratitude on his face. It seems like my angel's ready for her sleep. Master Snow, you must have worn her out. Just how many games were the two of you playing today? Jerion asked, loving the redness on Jon's face. I don't know, my lord. A lot. Well, thank you, Jon. She seems happier than I've seen her in a long time. The two entered the room, and Jurian helped Jon put Joy to bed, kissing the little girl on the head as he laid her down. Night-night, Angel. Nini Papa. Nani Jan. Night-night, Joy. Joy was asleep before they even left the room. The smile on her face only made her look more like her father, who was wearing the exact same smile. They walked down the hall together silently before they reached Jon's room. Jon, I want to thank you for today. You didn't need to do that, but you did, and I won't forget it. I enjoyed myself, my lord. She's very precious. Aye, that she is. My lord, if it's no bother, would it be all right if I visited her again? Jon, you don't have to. No, my lord, I'd like to, if it's fine with you, that is. Aye, lad, it's more than fine, Jurian said as he smiled at him. Thank you, my lord. No, lad, thank you. You have no idea what this means to me, but thank you all the same. Jon went to sleep tired that night. The little girl had worn him out. But he'd had so much fun, it made him think of his little sister back in Winterfell. Would he have been allowed to spend time with her, or would she, like Sansa, be taken away from him as soon as her mother or the Septa had noticed him? He resolved to spend as much time with Joy as he could. Like him, she was motherless and a bastard, although in her case, her father seemed to only want what's best for her. Yaxley sat at his desk, listening to his uncle tell him about Jon spending his time with his niece. It reinforced everything he thought about the young man. After the first day Jurian had found him, Jon had made time to visit Joy daily. He'd played with her, read to her, took her for her meals. The little girl had even been taken around the castle by Jon, and the excitement on her face when anyone saw them together was something most people commented on. It had made Jon a lifelong friend of his uncle's, more so, because the boy did it not to curry favor, but because it made both his and the girl's days brighter. But they had important things to discuss, and as his uncle finished, they waited for Tyrion, Kevan, and Jon to arrive. Yavin had never seen the benefit of a page before, but having someone to send for people was something he found very useful, especially when that person was Jon. The boy was dutiful to a fault. Ask him to do something, and quicker than you could think. He'd be off on whatever errand he'd sent him on. How the boy managed to fit as much into his days as he did was an enigma to Jaime. My lord, Jon said, entering the room, Tyrion and Kevan beside him. Uncle, brother, come sit, we have much to discuss. Jon, wine if you will. Well, brother, what's so important? Indeed, my lord. I was just getting ready to ride to Lannisport. Kevan quickly added. Jaime had made Kevan overseer of Lannisport. It wasn't the equivalent of being Castellan of Casterly Rock, but if anything, his uncle had more duties and responsibility. He had originally planned to leave Kevan as he was, and have Tyrion oversee Lannisport. But if Tyrion was to be lord one day, then he needed to run the rock. After Jon poured the wine, he retreated behind Jaime, standing in his usual place at this right shoulder. Kevan especially had disagreed with this, but Jaime had held firm. This was how it would be, and he'd accept no arguments otherwise. Gentlemen, I intend for a tourney to be held in Lannisport in 4 moons' time, the largest tournament that we've ever held. A tournament? What's the damn use of a tournament? Kevan asked, irritation clear in his voice. This particular one is important. It's in memory of my father. Jaime said, noticing Kevan's expression immediately change. Oh, of course, I'll begin preparations immediately. We should endeavor to make sure everyone important attends. The king, the queen, all the lord paramounts, and the members of the great houses. It's what my brother deserves. Kevan said, completely on board now. Of course, uncle. We'll need to spend a lot of money on this, both in prizes and in making sure it's the spectacle it needs to be. Jaime said before looking to Tyrion. Well, it wouldn't be a Lannister tournament without lots of gold now, would it? Tyrion said before Jurian interjected. You know you won't be able to compete, my lord. I know, uncle. I'm the host. But that's fine. My page will be competing for me. What? Jon said in a shocked voice from behind him. Oh, it's not like that, Jon. I intend to have a Squires and Pages tournament as part of the festivities. Under 12s in a series of one-on-one duels. My lord, the boy is only 7 name days, his uncle Kevan said. And he already beats most of our young recruits, Kevan, Jurian said, a smile on his face. He watched as Jon stood there, the look on his face changing from shock to something else. He saw the pride that his uncle's words had instilled in him, but that was quickly replaced by a look of determination. Very well then. You all will need to work together on this. Jaime said before dismissing the others. Jon, a word, please. Yes, my lord. This tournament is a big opportunity, Jon. You have 4 moons to train hard. I have faith in you, lad. but you'll be up against older boys, so there's no pressure on you. Just do your best. That's all I ask." "I will, my lord. You can be certain of that." Lannisport, a few weeks later. As Tyrion looked out at the ground for the upcoming tournament, he felt a sense of pride. Jaime had practically given him full reign of the preparations, and he promised he wouldn't disappoint. He had brought Jon and a small escort with him. The tiltyard and the pavilions were both coming along really well, which only left the dueling arena to be completed. The idea behind it was a strange one to Tyrion. Usually there were melees, but Jaime had insisted on a separate space for duels. His brother was particularly excited for the squire's duel that Jon would compete in. Tyrion had to admit the boy had talent, but to compete against older squires and wannabe knights was a bit too much to expect from a 7-name-day-old boy. Even if Jaime had restricted it to 12 name days or below, but his brother insisted, and Tyrion could sense how important it was to him, so he drew up plans, and the arena itself would allow for an uninterrupted views down to the dueling square in the center. "Well, Jon, what do you think?" "I've never seen anything like it, Tyrion. It's unbelievable. How have you managed to get so much done so quickly?" "Lots of gold, Jon. Lots of gold." "Is there much left to be done?" "It's mostly making sure that it looks good. The major work is nearly done. We need to organize stalls and places for food and drink, but most of the heavy lifting is done." The two walked, and Tyrion noticed the waves he and Jon got from the workers and the people of Lannisport. It was odd to him. He'd always been received politely to his face, but this was different since Jaime had come back. He'd been allowed to help improve the port. His uncle Kevin was in charge. But it was Tyrion who came up with a lot of the plans. He and Jon had been regular visitors to the town over the last few weeks, and word had spread about the young lord and his brother's page. As they headed towards the small tavern where they liked to eat, his cousin came rushing up to him. Lancel was an annoying little shit who Kevin had only named as his squire because Jaime had done so with Jon. Unlike Jon, though, Lancel had made no effort to learn and thought his position allowed him liberties, which it did not. "Oh, Lancel, what brings you here?" "My father wishes to speak to you." The boy sneered at him. "Well, it'll have to wait. My companion and I were just about to eat. Isn't that right, Jon?" Perhaps we can meet with Lord Caven first." "My lord, at least the bastard knows his place." Lancel mockingly said, "Careful, Lancel. Remember what my brother did to the last squire who spoke out of turn." Tyrion watched as the boy shuddered. An unlucky squire had been heard calling Jon and Joy bastards when they were walking around the castle. When Jaime heard, he personally took the boy outside for a spar. It was brutal, and since then, no one had the nerve to speak that way where it could be overheard. "Whatever imp," the sneering boy said before leaving. "What an idiot," Jon said as they walked into the tavern. After finishing their meal and after Jon paid for the meal for a couple of very grateful workers, they left and headed to Kevin's offices in the trade district of Lannisport. Tyrion was looking forward to getting back to the Rock, so hoped whatever his uncle wanted him for wasn't too time-consuming. The building that housed the Lannister offices was as expected large and imposing. His uncle's office itself was on the ground floor, which Tyrion was grateful for. They entered the building and made their way to the office. The guard knocked and his uncle bid them enter. As usual, his uncle frowned, seeing Jon with him, but Jaime wouldn't accept him being sent away from meetings if he was around. And Tyrion felt likewise. He sat down and Jon nodded to his uncle before moving to the wine and pouring Tyrion a glass. He then moved and stood over Tyrion's right shoulder exactly as he always did with Jaime. "So, uncle, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "It's this damn tournament, Tyrion. Do you have any idea how much this is costing?" "I know exactly, uncle. Without prize money, we've spent 93,000 gold dragons. Jaime intends to spend another 150,000 in prizes and refreshments, so by the time we're finished, this will cost near enough 300,000. "Exactly, Tyrion, almost 300,000 gold dragons for a damn tournament." "It's not a simple tournament, though, is it, uncle? It's father's memorial. My brother would never have approved these building works, Jaime insists on." "No, perhaps not, but Jaime is lord now, and his word is law. Besides, have you any idea how much we stand to make from this tournament?" "Make? What the hell are you talking about, Tyrion? We're spending money, not making it." "Jon, if you will, the list in your pocket." "Here, my lord," Jon said, and went to hand Tyrion a piece of paper. "No, you read it, Jon." The boy looked at him, and Tyrion nodded. "Armor sales, 25,000. Horse rentals and stabling, 30,000. Port taxes, 55,000. License fees, 75,000. Nighttime entertainment, 50,000. Gambling and sundries, 50,000. Miscellaneous, 75,000, giving a grand total of 360,000 gold dragons. Miscellaneous licenses, gambling, and nighttime activities, which are what exactly, by the way? I think young Jon means brothels, uncle. Tyrion said, trying to keep from laughing both at the embarrassment of Jon's face and the annoyance on his uncle's. How do we make money from brothels? His uncle asked. We charge them a business fee the same as we do any other business in Lannisport. They're eager to pay it. Since we'll insure like any other business, they're offered the same protections. You'll turn Lannisport into a refuge for whoremongers. Uncle, that's exactly what a tournament is. Now, if that's all, myself and my companions are keen to return to the Rock. Yes, very well, I'll have Lancel show you out. No, it's fine, Uncle, we know the way. Come on, Jon, let's go. I'm sure my cousin awaits the return of her favorite storyteller. The Gold Road. Cersei sat in her wheelhouse, Joffrey sitting opposite. They had been traveling along the Gold Road for weeks, and she was tired of sleeping in the wheelhouse. But when asked to share the king's tents, she had said they weren't good enough for a queen, let alone a lioness like her. Thankfully, though, they were nearing their first castle, and riders had been sent to inform them of their king's arrival. House Lyddon was a proud and noble house and one of her family's most loyal banner men, though the castle itself was more functional than luxurious. Cersei would relish spending a night indoors. My queen, we shall need to leave the wheelhouse to enter Deep Den, Ser Barristan said as he knocked on the door. Surely not, Ser Barristan. How are we to get there? We need to ride off the Gold Road, my queen. The king's given order to have your horse prepared. Cersei was apoplectic. This was a joke. What kind of savages didn't build their roads up to allow a wheelhouse to use it? Now she was expected to arrive by horse. Where was her litter? Was it not brought with them? Robert would hear of this, the indignity of it. She almost refused to leave the wheelhouse. But in the end, necessity trumped pique, and she and Joffrey accompanied Ser Barristan to where the horses were waiting. Her oaf of a husband sat on his destrier. Only a fool like him would ride a damn warhorse outside of battle. Her own grey mare was saddled, and here Ser Barristan awaited permission to help her mount. My queen? She nodded at the man, and he helped her up. She sat there side saddle, a scowl on her face, and looked to see her husband smile. She wished to rip the damn thing off his face, but she just glowered, and they began to ride towards the castle. After a few minutes, which to Cersei felt like hours, they arrived. She allowed Cersei Barristan to help her dismount, and together with Robert, the King's Guard, and their accompaniment, they walked to where the castle's residents were already down on one knee. Deep Den is yours, your grace, Lord Lyman said to the king. Rise, my lord. It's been a long journey, and we're in need of sustenance. Of course, your grace. We have your rooms prepared, and there will be a feast tonight in your and her grace's honor. Good. It's a fine castle you have here. My lord, wouldn't be easy to take in a siege. No, your grace, Deep Den would not fall, I guarantee that. Good, good, man, the king said before walking away. Your grace, it's a pleasure to see you again, Lord Lyman said as he bowed before her. Indeed, Lord Lyman, it's good to see a loyal Westerlands man. I was always loyal to your father, and now I swore my oaths to your brother, your grace. My family and myself remember those loyal to us, my lord, and we reward them. She watched as the older man's eyes lit up. Her father had taught her that men were easy to get on your side. Fear or reward usually did the trick. But as a woman, she learned that there was another way to get what she wished from men. She nodded to the man and presented Joffrey as the crown prince. He was before she, along with Ser Barristan and the ladies Lord Lyman motioned to, headed to her rooms. The feast that night was extravagant, and as usual lost on her oaf of a husband. The food was plentiful, rich, and after eating food prepared on the road, a welcome respite, and the wine she was served was of the very best quality. Her husband was carrying on in his usual manner, groping, serving girls, and swallowing drinks like they were water. The captain of Lord Lyman's guards had caught Cersei's attention, though, and she had flirted with the man most of the night. His muscular body and tight dark hair stirred something in her, and she could feel the heat pooling at her core. But she tried her best to douse the flames. She was close. Within the week she would be home, and he would be there. She squeezed her thighs together and remembered what it had been like. How they fit together. How they would once more. Soon Jaime, she thought, as she drank her wine. Creek called. Rowena sat in comfortable silence at the high table. Her son was being his usual oafish self, and she could see the strong-boy roll his eyes while his father, Lord Roland, simply nodded along to her son's buffoonery. Down at the lower tables, her grandchildren sat with the younger members of the castle's residents. Garland and Loras were entertaining the boys with tales of swords in the upcoming tournament. No doubt, but as usual, it was her granddaughter who was the center of attention. Marjorie had practically the whole table captivated. The boys, while listening to her grandsons, kept looking at her, and the girls had already started copying her mannerisms. No doubt, by the time they returned to the castle, they'd be copying her hair and how she dressed Olenna. Thought and grinned. He actually was doing a good job of keeping Lady Crakehole engaged, and a part of Olenna felt bad that Willis had remained at Highgarden, but his injured leg didn't allow for comfortable traveling. Comfort had been sorely lacking on this journey. They had traveled the ocean road and stayed in tents. Luckily, the weather kept fine, but at her age, staying in tents was not something she'd recommend. Luckily, they had decided to stay at Oakhart for a couple of days before moving on. "Grandmama, are you well?" Her granddaughter's voice pulled her from her contemplation. "Of course, my dear. Just a little tired. I shall probably head to bed soon." "If you're sure, Grandmama, I could come with you. We could read if you'd like." "No, my dear. Enjoy the feast. It'll be another moon nearly until the next one. Just don't wear yourself out." She smiled at Marjorie as her granddaughter turned and headed back to the table. Olenna nodded to her guards and bid good night to her host and her son, and good daughter, citing age, she made her way to her quarters, glad of the chance to think in silence. The tourney was an interesting opportunity. She'd get the chance to get the measure of the strength of the new Lord of the Westerlands, and also a chance to begin her groundwork with the king. Her Marjorie would be queen, that was for certain, and it would start with this tournament. They left the next day. Traveling again was annoying, but the weather had held and they would make good time. There was only one more major castle between them and Lannisport, but they would not be stopping there. There was no way on earth Olenna would have her family in the halls of Gregor Clegane. Even traveling close to the cows gave her jitters, which is why she insisted on such a large escort. After a couple of weeks of traveling, the town of Lannisport was spotted in the distance. Olenna sighed and prepared herself. The Game of Thrones was about to begin. Casterly Rock. Jon sat at the edge of the bed, the little girl looking up at him expectantly as he began the story. In a faraway land there lived a little princess, whose name was Joy. "Yagye," the little girl exclaimed happily. "Yes, Joy, her name was the same as yours." The little princess had a friend, a wolf, which she called Yoan. He smiled at her, as they played the same game they always did. He had found when reading stories to Joy that while she liked them, she preferred the ones that she herself was in. So he had begun tailoring his stories so the girl's name was always Joy. Once he did that, he found she always wanted the friend's name to be Jon. She could be quite insistent, so he gave in like he usually did, where she was involved. Quickly spending time with the little girl had become as important to him as sparring or his lessons. He had missed it one day as he had been late getting back from a trip to Lannisport with Tyrion, and the girl had sobbed. It had taken him staying with her the whole of the next day, to bring back her usual happy countenance. Joy and the wolf ran through the fields. "No." "No," he asked, smiling. "No, ride Wolfie. Wolfie like horsey," she giggled. "Fine, fine." Joy sat on the wolf's back as he ran through the fields. "Yosie," she laughed loudly. Jon continued on with the story. The interruptions grew lesser and lesser, and finally he noticed the girl's eyes begin to close, so he got up and kissed her on the forehead. "Night-night, Joy." "Night-night, Jon." He left the room and walked down to his own down the corridor, passing Jeriun as he did so. "She asleep?" "Yeah, she was tired out after today. Still wanted her story, though." "You spoil her, Jon." "She deserves to be spoiled." "I lad that she does." "Good night, Jeriun." "You too, Jon." He entered his room. The tiredness hit him as soon as he sat down on the bed. Luckily, his duties would lessen over the next week with the tournament starting. Jaime wanted him to concentrate on that so he wouldn't need to attend him as much, although would still be expected to do so formally. He looked to the training sword which leaned against the wall. Jaime had ordered it to specific requirements, and just looking at it confused Jon as much as it had when he'd handed it to him. The blade was more slender than normal, and the hilt had been made specifically for his hand. The measurements and the comfort of holding it made it almost feel like an extension of his arm. Swinging the blade, Jon noticed how much quicker it cut through the air. His swings were faster and his parries quicker when using it. His initial doubts had faded, and he looked forward to see how it would stack up when used in the duels. He took his clothes off and got into bed. Tomorrow was an important day, and he needed to be up early. Sure, he had met the king before, but tomorrow he'd meet the queen also.